Chapter 354. Dingyang Kuaixin. Oh my god, the spectators were so surprised that they dropped the melons in their hands. After watching the host's live broadcast for a few years, this was the first time he had seen a group fight of such a scale. Moreover, the two parties involved in the fight were rich second generations with great status in ancient times. This feeling was indescribable. Lao Cg Lianmen, TSK, to put it bluntly, they are just nouveau riche or local tycoons with no background. From this, it could be seen how the upbringing of the two families was like. If it were a landowning household with a solid foundation, even if they wanted nothing more than to stomp the other party to death, they would still be courteous on the surface. Ling Long Mibao hashtag propping my chin. Compared to a hypocritical battle of words, I still prefer this kind of momentum. Nguan Bao Bao Tai, haha, I like it too. Just like what the host had said before, it was useless no matter how eloquent you were with your mouth. Once your opponent's ears were blocked, you wouldn't be able to affect him no matter how loud your opponent was. What was the use of only being good at talking? Even if he gave the other party a few scratches, why not hit him back for others to see? Therefore, if you can use your fists, you definitely can't use your mouth. Because of Jiang Pingji's influence, most of the audience in the streaming room had been infected with her temperament. Life and death are indifferent. If you're not satisfied, just fight. If you can use your fists, don't talk nonsense. Jiang Pingji raised her hand to protect Su Ku to prevent the thin scholar from getting involved in the melee. Out of the corner of her eye, she glanced at the expressions of the passers-by around her. They all looked like they were here to watch the show. She was slightly moved. Let them fight and not find someone to separate them? Jiang Pingji lowered her eyelids and asked the servant coldly. The servant smiled bitterly as if he had drunk a large bowl of bitter gourd juice. His entire face was scrunched up. What are you talking about? The servant added in his heart, but he didn't dare to say it out loud. Although my master is Prince Changsho, the prince is busy every day. How would he have the time to care about these trivial matters? No matter if it's the grandson of Secretary Huang or the son of General Fong, they're both immovable Buddhas. Who dares to stop them? It was not a big deal to stop a fight, but they were afraid that both sides would think that the third party was a hindrance and beat up the person who tried to stop the fight first. At that time, it would truly be like suffering in silence, unable to voice out the bitterness. When immortals fought, mortals suffered. Now, he could only hope that they would finish the fight as soon as possible so that the tea house could close early. As for the items that were broken or smashed, make a list and send it directly to their mansions. For the sake of the Buddha, the owner of the tea house was Prince Changsho. Secretary Huang and Army General Fong would also consider compensating them. After listening, Jiang Pingji coldly responded with an "oh" and did not comment further. A bunch of brats causing trouble. They're wrestling on the ground. There's no technique involved at all. Jiang Pingji crossed her arms in front of her chest and took a step back to avoid the delicate teacup that was about to hit her toes. She tilted her head and complained to Su Ku, "Who do you think will win?" Su Ku glanced at his Langjun and prayed that he would not cause any more trouble. He lowered his eyes and muttered, "It should be from Secretary Huang's family." Nowadays, the government relies more on eunuchs. The group of eunuchs was very powerful, and now they were also arrogant, like the sun at high noon. But in essence, everything they had came from the emperor's connivance. The selling of official positions and titles was also secretly approved by the emperor. They were closely attached to the emperor, and their life and death were decided by the emperor. If the emperor was still young, they would have great achievements. But the problem was that although the emperor was muddle-headed, he was blinded by greed and attached great importance to power. The eunuchs were just dogs in the emperor's hands that were used to bite people. The group of relatives of the emperor was different. Although they were also the emperor's dogs, they had their own roots and had more autonomy than the eunuchs. The emperor also handed the imperial guards of Shangjing to the Fong family, which showed how much the emperor valued the Fong family, the group of relatives of the emperor. They also had a higher position in the emperor's heart. Whether it was the group of relatives of the emperor or the group of eunuchs, they were originally promoted by the emperor to deal with the aristocrats. Now that most of the aristocrats in Shangjing had retreated, There were also many high officials who had resigned. For example, the head of the secretariat, Feng Ren, had given the emperor a fatal illusion. What illusion? He mistakenly thought that he had taken back the power in the hands of the aristocratic families. He felt that he was no longer a puppet emperor who was constrained by others. Under such circumstances, the two dogs that he raised, the group of eunuchs and the group of relatives of the emperor, became a bit of an eyesore. The group of eunuchs could only rely on the emperor. In comparison, the group of relatives of the emperor was more troublesome. Jiang Pingji also guessed that they were from Secretary Huang's family, but the reason was not what Su Ku was worried about. The contest between the group of relatives of the emperor and the group of eunuchs was also real. If it was in the court, how could it be placed on a few juniors? The child of General Fang's family is too fat. Look at his figure. He can block half of the door of the tea house by himself. No matter how he moves, he is a huge target. Secretary Huang's grandson is clever. He has been hiding behind the manservant and shooting arrows from the back. He has great achievements. Who gave him the courage to compete with a long-distance fighter in terms of mobility? Su Ku was silent. He suddenly felt that his previous serious analysis had all been fed to the dogs. Jiang Pingji continued, however, when it comes to a group fight, one man can hold the pass against 10,000 people, or one man can drown people with too much saliva. Secretary Huang's young Langjun doesn't have enough fighters. If it continues to drag on, I'm afraid he will suffer losses. When Su Ku heard that, he secretly rolled his eyes. When it came to a group fight, he only admired his Langjun. As they talked, the situation became clearer and clearer. General Fang's son was very favored at home. Whenever he went out, he would bring 20 to 30 thugs with him. Just now, only half of them participated in the battle. The other half received the news that Langjun had been beaten and rushed in from outside. Originally, the two sides were evenly matched, but now, because of the number of people, the balance had tilted. Seeing that Secretary Huang's grandson was about to be caught and beaten up, the lad suddenly rolled backward and shouted regardless of his embarrassment. "Brother Ju, come and save me." Brother Ju? Jiang Pingji was already tired of watching. She didn't expect Secretary Huang's grandson to call for help at the last minute. She scanned her surroundings, wanting to find out who Brother Ju was. Fang Pengzi's side had already formed an overwhelming advantage. His super heavy body formed a shadow that forced Secretary Huang's grandson to the corner. "But, call for help. Let's see who can help you, you bastard." Secretary Huang's grandson's face had already blossomed, and there were some green and purple bruises on it. He looked embarrassed, but his eyes were still stubborn. I'll return those words to you. Don't be so scared that you'll wet your pants later." Fang Pengzi's heart was burning with anger. He raised his huge fist and wanted to hit someone. At that moment, a clear voice that sounded like a compass came from the crowd. "Wait, who's messing with my business?" Fang Pengzi turned his head and looked fiercely at the source of the voice. Everyone immediately looked over and saw a young man who was about 15 or 16 years old standing in the corner. He wore a green Confucian robe, which made him look tall. Chapter 355. "Hey, you're just a skinny kid. Do you want to stand up for this bastard?" Fang Pengzi bared his teeth and waved his fist threateningly. The handsome young man with red lips and white teeth was not afraid at all. It was as if he did not see the huge fist. "Fight? I definitely can't beat you." Feng Ju only had a servant with him. Although he had learned horsemanship, archery, and swordsmanship, he could only defend himself. He was not lethal enough. "But Fang Langjun is bullying me with numbers. Isn't it a bit too much? If you can't beat me, get lost. Don't nag in front of me. Either you stand and watch him get beaten, or you come and get beaten up together. This is Shangjing. Who doesn't know my name? How dare a jealous scholar come and stir up trouble?" Feng Ju's eyebrows relaxed and he said leisurely, "Although I'm not Fang Longjuan's opponent, it doesn't mean that no one can subdue you." Fang Pengzi responded with an "oh" and said nastily, "Do you want to go home and beg for help?" "There's no need for that." Feng Ju suddenly revealed an evil smile. It was as if a pure white drawing paper was dyed with a thick and colorful line. Fang Langjun, do you dare to bet with me? If you win, I won't care about Huang Longjuan's matter. If you lose, this matter will be written off. Fang Pengzi snorted. Although he had a fat pig's ears and no ink on his chest, it did not mean that he was really a pig. This bet doesn't benefit me at all. Fang Pengzi sized up Feng Ju with a pair of sneaky eyes and then said nastily, why don't we change the bet? If you win, it'll be written off. If you lose, you'll spend a night with me. How about that? As soon as he said that, everyone's expression changed. Feng Ju's eyes flickered and revealed a frightening murderous intent. Fang Pengzi was frightened. His legs turned to jelly under the gaze, but he still straightened his chest. Secretary Huang's grandson did not expect things to turn out this way. He hurriedly scolded Fang Pengzi. Shut up. You really dare to say anything. Brother Ju is the third Langjun of the Feng family in Shangyang. Aren't you afraid of offending people? He deliberately emphasized the words, third Langjun of the Feng family. When Jiang Pingji heard this, she secretly sized up Feng Ju. She thought to herself, this is Feng Jin's third brother? Feng Ju's attire looked simple, but the material of his clothes was exquisite. With one look, one could tell that he was either rich or noble. Fang Pengzi did not expect him to have such a powerful background. Although the head of the secretariat, Feng Ren, had retired long ago, the prestige of the Feng family in Dongqing was still unshakable. Fang Pengzi wanted to retreat, but he didn't want to show any fear on his face. Feng Ju sneered and said, sure. Brother Ju. Secretary Huang's grandson looked regretful. If he had known this would happen, he wouldn't have dragged Feng Ju into this quagmire. Fang Pengzi secretly cursed in his heart. Since Feng Ju didn't give him a way out, then everyone was in a difficult position. What are we betting on? Fang Pengzi asked. Feng Ju pointed at Jiang Pingji, who was watching the show from the side. Whoever can take away a personal item from this Langjun will be the winner. What do you think? Jiang Pingji was confused. The audience in the streaming room also reacted. He was trying to divert the trouble to someone else. Xylitol chewing gum, no way. Young Feng Jin's brother is so black-bellied and hateful. He actually framed the streamer? Ling Long Mibao, you're so naughty. The streamer is really unjustly implicated this time. Noodle House Lao CG? Why do I feel that this brother Ju has already recognized the streamer's identity and wants to ask for help? Feng Jin knows the streamer. He must have told his brother about the streamer's terrifying combat power. He said that the streamer can fight 100 people alone. Everyone was confused by the content of the bet. Fang Pengzi was the first to react. He was so angry that he almost stomped his feet. Bah, you must know this person. This is cheating. Feng Ju looked innocent and said, I don't know this Langjun. Jiang Pingji frowned unhappily. Her hands were a little itchy. She said, I don't know him either. Fang Pengzi smiled evilly. Since you don't know him, this bet is much easier. Kid, if you don't want to suffer for nothing, then take out a personal item. The more personal, the better. This young master will definitely win this bet. Surround him. The manservants obeyed and hurriedly surrounded Jiang Pingji, separating Feng Ju at the same time. As long as Fang Pengzi got Jiang Pingji's personal item before Feng Ju, he would win the bet. Jiang Pingji sneered and suddenly asked in a clear voice, Feng Huayu, are all your brothers so naughty? At that moment, a clear and mature voice of a young man came from the private room on the second floor. My younger brother is naughty and mischievous. Please forgive him. As soon as the voice fell, a young man wearing a jade crown and a watercolored scholar's robe lifted the bead curtain of the private room and walked down the stairs. Looking closely, it was not Feng Jin, Feng Huayu, whom they had not seen for a few years. The young man's appearance was magnificent. His facial features were slightly similar to the young man from before. When the two were put together, it was obvious that they were biological brothers. Even so, he shouldn't have made such a bet. If he had lost, how would it have ended? Jiang Pingji was puzzled. In her opinion, the upbringing of the Feng family could only produce a gentleman like Feng Jin. How could they have produced someone as rebellious as Fengju? He was bold and willful. He even dared to agree to the terms of the bet. This kid had a good temper. With Jean watching over him, nothing will happen. After not seeing him for a few years, Feng Jin's impatience and immaturity had disappeared under the tempering of time. What was left was the smoothness and transparency of pearls and jade. He was like a pearl that had been dusted off. He shone brightly, warm, and not dazzling. What about my reputation? Nothing would happen to him, but his reputation would be bad if it was spread out. Feng Jin's lips moved slightly. There was a hint of helplessness in his eyes. There's no need to worry when there are too many debts. Among the three brothers of the Feng family, only Fengju was a freak. His rebellious temperament was unknown to whom he got it from. Jiang Pengji understood after hearing his words. Jiang Pengji and Feng Jin reminisced about the past. Feng Pengzi felt that he had been left out. He was unhappy and was about to throw a tantrum. Feng Pengzi stomped his feet and pointed his fat finger at Jiang Pengji. His expression was slightly ferocious. Who cares who you are? Capture this kid and remove his clothes. Didn't you want a personal item? I'll take it all and make this bet lose for sure. Feng Jin looked at Feng Pengzi with pity. He was acting recklessly. Feng Ju's eyes moved back and forth between his brother and Jiang Pengji. No one knew what he was thinking. Take good care of my accountant. If he loses even a strand of hair, Huayu, you can't afford to pay for it. Jiang Pengji threw the sandalwood fan in her hand into Feng Jin's arms and entrusted Su Ku to him. On the side, Princess and Yaina glanced at the handsome Feng brothers with coquettish eyes. They were a feast for the eyes and made one's fingers twitch. She wondered where Lu Shi came from. He actually knew so many young talents. Feng Jin smiled happily. Of course I'll ensure that Xiaoyu will be fine. The audience in the streaming room could not help but cover their eyes. The scene that followed was too bloody. They could not bear to look at it. Hee, have you thought it through? Feng Pengzi was still unaware of his imminent death. He thought that Jiang Pengji was afraid of trouble and wanted to take the initiative to admit defeat. Remove your clothes. Do you know who my father is? Jiang Pengji asked. Feng Pengzi was furious. I don't care who your father is. Yes, you don't have to care who my father is, but you have to know who I am. Chapter 356. You don't need to know who your father is, but you need to know who your father is. Hearing Jiang Pengji's declaration, Feng Ju was stunned on the spot. A wanton evil smile appeared on his face. Second brother, is this the Lu Lanting that you always talk about? It's true that hearing about you is not as good as meeting you in person. What a madman. Not to mention anything else, just this rebellious arrogance was quite to his liking. Feng Jin secretly caught a glimpse of his younger brother's infatuated expression. He couldn't help but raise his hand and tug on his sleeve, pulling him out of the battle circle. He didn't want his third brother to be innocently implicated. If he was beaten up by Jiang Pengji, he would have been beaten up for nothing. There would be no place for him to argue. As he spoke, Secretary Huang's grandson held his sore waist with one hand and covered his slapped face with the other as he limped towards Feng Ju. Brother Ju, it's my fault this time. I've implicated you. Hiss, this stinking fatty, it hurts a lot when he hits me. Secretary Huang's grandson grimaced in pain. In terms of nominal age, he was 2 years older than Feng Ju, but in terms of months, it was only 2 or 3 months a year. Probably because he often fell and rolled, he looked stronger than his peers, but his head was a little injured. Feng Ju secretly held back his laughter and revealed concern on his face. It's fine. It's just that when Bogeo returns this time, I'm afraid he will be punished by the family law Rattan. When he heard the words family technique Rattan, his face, which looked as if a palette of colors had been overturned, became even more distorted, making him look even more abstract. Alas, don't talk about it. I'll definitely be beaten when I go back this time. Secretary Huang's grandson looked sullen, and his face was full of drama. When he was free, he secretly glanced at Feng Ju. Seeing that Feng Ju had no intention of distancing himself from him, he secretly breathed a sigh of relief. To be honest, even if he hated others who humiliated him because he was the descendant of a eunuch, he could not deny his family background. It was also the source of his inferiority complex. It was not easy for him to meet a like-minded friend who came from a prestigious family. He really did not want to lose Feng Ju because of this. This is Huaijia's good friend? Feng Jin did not care about the chaotic situation on the field, because he knew very well that those minions were not even enough to fill the gaps between their teeth. Feng Jin's younger brother was called Feng Ju. His courtesy name was Huaijia. This generation of the Feng clan's descendants were mostly named with words related to jade. Hearing Feng Jin mention him, Secretary Huang's grandson quickly put away his playful expression and said seriously, "That's me." Feng Ju introduced, "Second brother, this is Huang Song, the classmate and good friend I've always mentioned. He's the disciple of the great scholar, Mr. Ji." Dongqing had a strong academic atmosphere, and there were many great scholars. Although the Mr. Ji that Feng Ju mentioned was not comparable to Master Yuanjing, he was still a very famous great scholar within the borders of Dongqing. Huang Song was able to use the title of the eunuch's descendant and become the disciple of a famous teacher. Obviously, he had some skills. Huang Song hurriedly said, "I don't deserve it. Second brother Feng can just call me Bogeo." Feng Jin smiled gently and nodded. "Then it would be impolite of me to refuse." Huang Song was very sensitive to the emotional changes of others. He immediately knew that Feng Jin was keeping a distance from him. He wasn't too upset about this. If others knew that he was Secretary Huang's adopted grandson, they would have covered their noses and walked away. Very few people were willing to have a normal conversation with him. Feng Jin's attitude was actually very good. He was so focused on recognizing people that he almost forgot that Jiang Pingji was still fighting with Feng Pengzi. Huang Song slapped his forehead with one hand and hurriedly turned to ask Feng Ju, "Brother Ju, should we call for help?" Feng Ju lowered his eyelids and pouted. "Does he look like he needs help?" As soon as he finished speaking, Huang Song also turned his head to look at the situation of the fight in the hall. He happened to see a huge black shadow fall at his feet. Huang Song was so scared that he hurriedly took 2 steps back. He was still in shock. "Come, now tell me who's the father." "You're the father. You're the father." Feng Pengzi could still be arrogant at first, but as the servants died one by one and became paralyzed at his feet, his confidence became more and more fragile. He was like a snail that had its shell removed, revealing its tender body to be trampled on by others. He didn't feel the slightest sense of security. In an instant, he responded to whatever Jiang Pingji said with tears and snot flowing down his face. Jiang Pingji lifted her leg and kicked the servant who was blocking the way aside. She grabbed Feng Pengzi's collar with one hand and lifted him up with one hand while Huang Song's eyes almost popped out of his head. "Say it again. My ears aren't good. I didn't hear it." "Father, you're my father." Feng Pengzi was tall and sturdy, but it was all fat. He was shorter than Jiang Pingji by a head. Now that she lifted him up like a little chick, he was scared out of his wits. He shrank his neck like a quail and spoke incoherently. When Huang Song saw this, he was secretly speechless. He almost bit his tongue. He muttered in a low voice, "Oh my, that damn fatty weighs more than 2 dawn," but he actually lifted him up with one hand. This is simply innate divine strength. 1 dawn was equivalent to about 50 kilograms. 2 dawn was a full 200 kilograms, and this was just an estimated figure. Looking at Feng Pengzi's body size, he was at least 240 kilograms. His arms were thin, but he didn't expect his strength to be so great. Only then did he realize that Jiang Pingji had single-handedly defeated all the servants and fighters that Feng Pengzi had brought. Everyone had been beaten black and blue. Even though no one had died, looking at the degree of swelling, they would not be able to leave the house for the next 2 weeks and would not be able to see anyone. When he saw this, Huang Song's eyes revealed his appreciation for talent. He was eager to make friends with her. It's not a secret that Lang Jun was born with divine strength. Su Ke chuckled, as if the person who emitted the aura of a ruffian was not his Lang Jun. "May I know where your Lang Jun's ancestral home is and where he lives?" Huang Song asked with his hands cupped together. He was rather gentlemanly. My Longjuan's ancestral home is in Hejin. He has lived here for a long time. His family is Lu, Suku said plainly. When Huang Song met his eyes, he faintly felt a sense of fear, as if his thoughts had been seen through. The magistrate of Chongzhou, Lu Shi, is Longjuan's father. This background was not something that the descendants of eunuchs could covet. Suku added silently in his heart. Lu Shi's son Lu Shi? Huang Song suddenly thought of something. Are you saying that he is the Lu Shi who was born with divine strength and chased the tiger across the ravine? Chased the tiger across the ravine. This was a term used to describe a fierce general in the previous dynasty. It meant that this person was incomparably fierce. Even a ferocious tiger would break into a run when it saw him. Although Jiang Pingji was also born with divine strength, her reputation was not prominent. Until she left Langyi, she gambled with someone and killed 2 tigers. She even brought the 2 tiger carcasses around the city and flaunted them around her opponent's house. She was so angry that she vomited blood. Her fierce reputation spread because of that. Chapter 357. That's right. Suku nodded calmly. Huang Song completely gave up. Talented people were everywhere, but his status was low. There was no way for him to attract talented people, let alone Lu Shi's son. However, even if he could not be recruited, he could treat him as a friend. Seeing that he was so bold, he should be a broad-minded person who did not adhere to the secular world. Thinking of this, the regret in Huang Song's heart calmed down a little. He continued to watch the farce. Jiang Pingji looked at the bruise on the fat man's left eye. Driven by her obsessive-compulsive disorder, she simply hit his right eye too. It was symmetrical. Bah, I can't give birth to a good-for-nothing son like you. If I give birth to you, you'll definitely be a wall-climbing sissy. Such ridiculing words made all the guests in the hall laugh. In terms of sarcasm, Jiang Pingji's words were really sarcastic, extremely sarcastic. Aren't you afraid of being torn into pieces? The fat man was called back to his senses by the laughter. He was so embarrassed that his face turned red. He mustered up the courage to threaten her. If you have the cheek to ask your father to come over, I don't mind beating him up too. Jiang Pingji was not joking. If the fat man really dared to shout, she really dared to beat him up. The fat man was so angry that his face turned red. Jiang Pingji felt that she was not angry enough and added another sentence. However, if that's really the case, you'll have to call me grandpa when the time comes. As soon as this sentence was said, many people did not come back to their senses. They did not understand what she meant. Only Feng Jin, Feng Ju, and Suku were quick-witted. They understood the meaning behind it and almost choked on their own saliva. Huang Song was also quick-witted. He understood after a while. Jiang Pingji's words were very clear. She would beat the fat man up and ask him to call her father. If the fat man's father came, he would definitely be beaten up until he rolled on the ground and called her father. In that case, the fat man would become a grandchild and have to call Jiang Pingji grandpa. These words were really sarcastic. Get lost. I never leave anyone alive when I fight. If it weren't for your fathers, your corpses would be cold. Jiang Pingji sneered and threatened him. If you go back and complain, go ahead. This young master would like to hear whether it is you or me who is in the right. Although the cause was Fang Pengzi and Huang Song's fight for the top spot in the tea house, in the end, Fang Pengzi actually wanted to strip Jiang Pingji naked and humiliate her. This was no longer a simple conflict. If things got out of hand, it would not be easy to resolve. You just wait for this young master. Fang Pengzi was casually thrown to the ground by Jiang Pingji. His but landed on the floor of the hall. He felt as if his tailbone was about to break. He awkwardly covered his face with one hand and covered his aching face with the other. Before he ran away, he didn't forget to leave behind some harsh words. You're welcome to come again. Jiang Pingji waved her hand. There was no trace of fear on her face. The fat man's face turned purple from holding back his anger. He left in a sorry state under the protection of a group of hired thugs and servants. When Fang Pengzi was out of sight, Jiang Pingji wiped away the annoying smile on her face and resumed her usual coldness. Remember to compensate for the damage you've done to their place. These words were directed at Feng Jin. If it weren't for Feng Jin's brother, she wouldn't have suffered such an undeserved calamity. Feng Jin smiled gently and dignified. Huang Song, who was beside him, hurriedly said, "Today's incident started because of me. The compensation should be paid by me. I'll get the servants to send it over later. How can I let second brother Feng suffer losses?" Although Huang Song was the descendant of a eunuch, other than having a bad reputation, his life was more comfortable than anyone else's. In terms of pocket money, among everyone present, his private stash was the richest. Who is this? Jiang Pengji had been multitasking just now. She already knew Huang Song's background, but she still pretended not to know and asked despite knowing the answer. Huang Song introduced himself embarrassedly, "I'm Huang Song. If Lu Langjun doesn't mind, you can call me Bogeo." "Sure." Jiang Pingji nodded. Huang Song's eyes lit up. Compared to Feng Jin's gentle and distant attitude, Jiang Pingji didn't give him the feeling that she was unreachable. In other words, there was a chance to be friends. At that moment, Wu Majun, who had been ignored by everyone for a long time, opened his mouth. "That young Langjun is the beloved son of Marquis Chenjen. Lanting humiliated him, so Marquis Chenjen won't let it go." Marquis Chenjen was actually General Feng, who controlled 100,000 imperial guards in Shangjing. What's there to be afraid of? If he has the guts to come and reason with us, we'll bring out the facts and reason with him. Who doesn't have a father in this day and age? Jiang Pingji snorted. Her last sentence of competing for a father made Wuma Jun swallow his unfinished words. Fang Pangzi had brought 20 to 30 fighters with him, but they couldn't beat him and were killed instead. If General Fang was shameless, he could go ahead and announce it. If he really wanted to cause trouble for her, Jiang Pingji didn't have to be afraid. Competing for a father was fine. Who didn't have a father? She had instigated Lu Shi to go to Chongzhou. The court then sent a new chief of Hu County to take over Hu County. It was a pity that Hu County was like an iron bucket under Lu Shi's governance. The people didn't accept the new boss. 3 years had passed, and Hu County was still under Lu Shi's control. The emperor hated the current situation, but he didn't dare to act rashly. Hu County was a delicious cake that could only be seen but not eaten. Who would feel comfortable? Now, the emperor wanted to use Lu Huan and Wu Majun's marriage to get closer to Lu Shi and the royal family. He wanted to use the marriage of his children to slowly force Lu Shi to hand over Hu County. At this moment, General Fang was the emperor's dog. Why would he bite Jiang Pingji? Not only could he not bite her, but he also had to apologize to her afterward. Feng Jin held back his laughter. He almost couldn't maintain his gentlemanly appearance. "I haven't seen you for a few years, but you're still so sharp-tongued. I don't know who in this world can stand your temper. The world is so big. We can always find a matching pot. You don't have to worry about this." Jiang Pingji took her sandalwood fan and fanned herself. Suddenly, she thought of something and said, "I received your letter a few months ago. You said that Jingxian is 4 months pregnant. Now that I think about it, she should give birth in another 2 months, right?" Under Lu Shi's matchmaking, Feng Jin married Wei Jingxian in the end. In terms of the Feng family, Wei Jingxian's birth was a little low. However, considering that she was not a member of the royal family, the conditions were not too harsh. Feng Ren and his wife asked for Feng Jin's opinion on the candidate recommended by Lu Shi. Seeing that their second son was not against it, the marriage was decided. Feng Jin was indeed a good husband in this era. At least Jiang Pingji did not find any traces of another woman in him. This meant that Feng Jin's backyard was relatively clean. Other than his official wife, there were no other women in a mess. "Yes, my belly is getting bigger these few months. I vomit out whatever I ate last month. I'm so skinny. I feel nervous when I see it." It was Feng Jin's first time being a father. He usually looked calm, but in fact, he was very scared. In terms of the current medical standards, giving birth to a child was a trip to the gates of hell. One careless move could lead to 2 deaths. I heard from the elderly that the first child is not easy to give birth. To avoid accidents, it's better to hire a gynecologist and an experienced midwife to be on standby at home. It's better to prevent accidents. The Feng family was rich and imposing. They could afford to hire a maternity attendant for their daughter-in-law. Chapter 358. After Wu Majun found an excuse to send Princess Xianxia away, Feng Jin suddenly sighed and spoke to Jiang Pingji. You shouldn't have come to Shangjing. The hustle and bustle downstairs gradually quietened down with Feng Pengzi's departure. The quiet and elegant atmosphere was restored. As soon as she entered the house, Jiang Pingji unceremoniously changed a new tea set for herself. She brewed a cup of tea and sipped it warmly. My father is far away in Chongzhou and has no time to attend my sister's wedding. I'm the only male in the family. If I don't come, who will? Feng Jin said, if that's the case, leave when you can after your sister's wedding. Jiang Pingji could not help but laugh. She said, you and I are considered old friends. Who would chase someone away the moment they meet like you? Feng Jin glanced at Jiang Pingji angrily, as if to say, if you don't listen to good people, you'll suffer. He laughed helplessly. All right, I won't chase you away. Is that okay? The two talked about the recent years, and the atmosphere was harmonious. Feng Ju, Huang Song, and Su could listen quietly. Occasionally, they revealed thoughtful expressions. Feng Ju was the most puzzled. He knew his elder brother's temperament very well. He seemed gentle and graceful, as if he could talk to anyone. In reality, Feng Jin was the coldest, alienated, and difficult to get close to. On the other hand, Jiang Pingji did not feel like a gentleman like the rumors said. Instead, she seemed to be rebellious. The two of them became good friends. It was a little out of place. Since the capital region is already so chaotic, why did you bring the whole family here? His wife was about to give birth. Feng Jin was really ambitious. The topic went around in circles and returned to the situation in Shangjing. Jiang Pingji thought of Wei Jingxian's pregnancy. Now that chaos was coming, why did Feng Jin come to Shangjing instead of taking his wife to have a good pregnancy in his hometown? If anything happened, he would not be able to get away even if he wanted to. Feng Jin smiled bitterly. He spread his hands and said, this is not something I can decide. Jiang Pingji was puzzled at first, but when she saw Feng Jin's expression, she vaguely understood something. Her starry eyes widened slightly. She asked, the situation has reached such a stage? What else? Feng Jin raised his eyebrows and asked. To put it bluntly, Feng Jin represented the Feng family as a hostage and lived in Shangjing to appease the emperor. The influence of the relatives of the emperor and the power of the eunuchs were the two biting dogs prepared by the emperor to deal with the aristocratic families. In the past few years, the emperor had become more and more muddle-headed, allowing the marriage between the northern borderline and Dongqing to go smoothly. This move made many aristocratic families sense a great change in the atmosphere. In order to protect their families, some people chose to continue to rise and fall in the officialdom, while others pretended to be defeated and slowly retired. Feng Ren's resignation was naturally the latter. However, the emperor did not trust the Feng family at all. Perhaps it was because of this reason that Feng Jin and his wife temporarily lived in Shangjing after the wedding and rarely went out. The situation in the capital region was getting more and more tense, and his wife's belly was getting bigger by the day. This put a lot of pressure on him. The two of them did not discuss this topic in detail. After all, Huang Song was still here, and some topics had to be avoided. After staying for a long time, Huang Song vaguely knew that he was not welcome, so he simply found an excuse to leave the tea house. Feng Ju stood up to send him off. Feng Ju said in a low voice, "Second brother has been under a lot of pressure these days. Don't take it to heart, Bogeo." Although Huang Song was the son of a eunuch and his godfather was the powerful Secretary Huang, Secretary Huang was rather special among the eunuchs. He was also deeply liked by the emperor and did things like selling official positions and titles, but he also secretly extended olive branches to the aristocratic families. Yes, Huang Song's godfather, to put it bluntly, was on the fence. He was on good terms with both sides and did not offend either. If not for this, Feng Ju would not be friends with Huang Song. Huang Song shook his head, but his eyes kept glancing at the private room. He said in a low voice, "A few days ago, grandfather helped Song get a job. It's related to the guards in the capital region. If second brother Feng encounters any difficulties in Shangjing, feel free to look for me. I'll try my best to help if I can." Feng Ju nodded secretly and accepted this favor. "I will talk to second brother about this. I thank you on behalf of second brother, Bo Gao, for your kindness." After sending Huang Song away, Feng Jin was slightly relieved and spoke freely. Lanting really shouldn't have come to Shangjing now. Even if he had to find a lame excuse, he should have rejected it. Didn't Lanting notice that the emperor has been finding excuses to summon scholars from various clans to gather in Shangjing? Even the officials of the aristocratic families who are working outside have been summoned. I'm really terrified. Whether it was Jiang Pingji, Feng Jin, or Feng Ju, the aristocratic sons in Shangjing were all hostages. Although the emperor had not revealed his true intentions, this move was enough to make people panic. He's already here. Can he escape in the middle of the night? Jiang Pingji rolled her eyes and snorted. Before coming to Shangjing, more than one person said the same thing to me, but I still came. I'd like to see what he's up to. Feng Jin had a headache. He silently mouthed, "The imperial guards are acting strangely. I'm afraid someone is trying to usurp the throne." Jiang Pingji's eyes turned cold. She instantly understood. The imperial guards were under the control of General Feng. General Feng was a relative who was promoted by the emperor. He was the emperor's confidant. If the imperial guards were to act strangely, it could be that the emperor wanted to attack the aristocratic families and force them to hand over their power. However, Feng Jin added, "I'm afraid someone is trying to usurp the throne." Then the imperial guards' actions were somewhat thought-provoking. Usurp the throne? The princes were fighting fiercely for the throne. Prince Changsho, who had become famous, was eyeing the throne covetously. It was really hard to say who the usurper was. In the end, this is just a show where the mantis stalks the cicada, unaware of the oriole behind. Feng Jin had lived in Shangjing for a period of time. He had a clear understanding of the current situation. However, who is the mantis, the cicada, and the oriole, it all depends on one's ability. Lanting, listen to my advice. Be obedient these days. Put your own safety first. When this period is over, the situation should be clear. Su Ke heard Feng Jin's sincere and earnest advice. He could not help but look at him with a complicated expression. He had a feeling that this was not a good sign. Would he be slapped in the face by this flag? I know. Jiang Pingji agreed verbally, but only she knew what she was thinking in her heart. After all, the tea house was Prince Changsho's territory. Even if Jiang Pingji could guarantee that the conversation would be discreet, she did not want to talk about such an important topic in someone else's territory. Feng Jin understood. The two of them tacitly stopped the topic. At that moment, Feng Ju returned to the private room. Feng Jin pursed his thin lips into a straight line when he saw his troublesome younger brother. He looked very displeased. Feng Ju was completely oblivious to it. He laughed and sat down. You have to act according to your ability to save others. If you don't have the ability, you will bring trouble to others. Is this what the master at home taught you? Father doesn't like you to hang out with those people from all walks of life, but you don't. That Huang Song's heart is not pure. You call him brother, and today you almost caused trouble. Feng Jin frowned unhappily. He lectured in a flat tone. If Lanting was not present and helped you out, tell me, how do you want to end this? Feng Ju was not afraid of Feng Jin at all. He replied with a smile, I feel that Bo Gao has a genuine temperament and is worth befriending. Chapter 359. Feng Jin took a deep breath and asked bluntly, Your so-called true temperament is to drag you down with me when I get into trouble? This annoying little brother of his should grow up a little. How could he count the money after being sold? Huang Song and Fang Pengzi led their men to fight each other. Regardless of whether they won or lost, both sides would have a sense of propriety. No lives would be lost. At most, they would just embarrass themselves. However, Huang Song shouted, Brother Ju, Quickly come and save me. Feng Zhu, who was supposed to stay out of this matter, was dragged into it. To put it bluntly, with Feng Zhu's little bit of martial arts, he would only be sending himself to die if he went over. What help could he provide? Not only did Feng Jin dislike Huang Song for being a eunuch, but he also despised him for dragging Feng Zhu into the mire. Just this action alone was enough for Feng Jin to defame Huang Song for a lifetime. Feng Zhu did not speak. Feng Jin snorted coldly and asked, "Don't be vague about the main point. Answer me. Without Lanting's help, how would you have ended up today?" "Third brother, this is Shangjing. There are hidden dragons and crouching tigers everywhere. You are not allowed to act recklessly." When he thought of Fang Pengzi's previous request for a bet, he was so angry that his chest hurt. What made him even more upset was that Feng Zhu had agreed to it immediately. This brat shouldn't have been released at all. Feng Zhu, on the other hand, had a good temper. He smiled and said, "Don't be angry, second brother. Bogeo won't let me be humiliated." After Feng Jin heard this, he seemed to have thought of something. His expression became strange and conflicted, like an overturned pallet. His fingers trembled, afraid that he would hear some strange words from his younger brother's mouth. Jiang Pingji could tell that the two brothers were talking the same language. She could not help but laugh. She coughed lightly to attract their attention. What Huaijie wants to say is that Huang Song has the intention to rope him in. Regardless of whether it's a ploy to gain Huaijie's trust, he will try his best to protect Huaijie even if he is humiliated, Jiang Pingji explained, dispelling the terrifying thought in Feng Jin's mind. Feng Zhu revealed a relaxed smile and nodded. "That's right." Rather than saying that Huang Song had asked Feng Zhu for help, it was more like Feng Zhu was testing Huang Song to see how magnanimous he was. Even without Jiang Pingji's help, Feng Zhu was confident that he could escape unscathed. His brother was worrying too much. Feng Jin had a lot to say, but he didn't know where to start. Feng Jin's face darkened. "You shouldn't have dragged Lanting into this. What would you have done if you had not called out Lanting but some other innocent person? That Feng Langjun has always been a playboy. His actions can't be judged by common sense. Can you guarantee that everything is under control?" It was one thing for him to scam his own brother, but now he even scammed his brother's good friend. Who taught such a brat? Feng Zhu blinked uneasily and said with a faint smile, "If I didn't recognize Brother Lanting, I wouldn't have messed around, would I?" It was precisely because he had recognized it that he was fearless. Feng Jin understood what his younger brother meant. His heart was burning with anger. According to his words, if he recognized it, then he deserved to be tricked? "You're the son of the Feng family, and he's merely the descendant of a eunuch? Huaijie, what exactly do you want?" He knew that his younger brother had a wide range of friends and did not care about family status, but Feng Zhu's behavior gave him a bad feeling. Feng Jin criticized Huang Song's background, but Feng Zhu did not comment. This in itself was Huang Song's shortcoming, and it was also a stain that could not be erased. Although what Feng Jin said was the truth, Feng Zhu did not like his brother's habit of judging one's status based on one's family background. As they grew older, the contradiction and division between them became more serious. The founding emperor of Dongqing was an escaped slave, and he even worked as a coachman. The Feng family is also an official, but I don't see my brother saying anything about this. Suddenly, Feng Zhu sneered, and the atmosphere instantly dropped to a freezing point. Were these two brothers preparing to fight? As the saying goes, one should not wash one's dirty linen in public. It was better to bring the naughty child home and teach him a lesson. Feng Jin suppressed his anger and returned to his usual calm and gentle self. He apologized to Jiang Pengji solemnly, thinking that he would deal with the naughty child when they got back. "My youngest brother is naughty and mischievous. I've embarrassed myself in front of you. Huayu, don't be angry. Huaijie is still young and insensible. He will be fine when he's older." Jiang Pingji did not take the matter to heart. She even had a good impression of Feng Zhu. However, this brat really needed a beating. After a meeting, they parted on bad terms. After the Feng brothers left, Su Ku was still deep in thought. Jiang Pingji asked him, "Are you still thinking about Huayu and Huaijie?" Su Ku said, "A few years ago, I had a few conversations with Feng Langjun. He is not the kind of person who is fixated on family status. Why is he now? Jiang Pengji said. First of all, people change. Huaiyu is now a young man, not an immature boy. How can his thinking remain the same? Secondly, he is not fixated on family status, nor does he look down on people who are not part of the aristocratic families. He just doesn't like Huang Song. Su Ku was stunned. But just now, Xiaoyu, let's say you have a younger brother. In your eyes, this younger brother is still young and inexperienced, and he needs the protection of an elder brother. One day, a ruffian came from outside. He looked down on everyone from head to toe, but it was this kind of ruffian that made your brother think highly of him. As the elder brother, how could you feel good about it? Jiang Pengji explained with a faint smile. That ruffian was Huang Song. Su Ku was silent. As an only child, he did not understand the thoughts of a younger brother. Huaiyu does not approve of Huijie and Huang Song's friendship. It is for the good of this younger brother. No matter how many olive branches Huang Song's godfather extended to the aristocratic families, whether they are neutral or fence-sitters, as long as the emperor is wary of the aristocratic families, Huang Song and Huijie will stand against each other. What's the use of a close personal relationship? One may know a person's face but not his heart. Who knows what kind of person Huang Song is behind the scenes? Su Ku sighed after hearing that. In that case, Feng Langjun has put a lot of thought into it. However, he can't stand his younger brother's rebelliousness. Huijie's first impression of Huaiyu is the strongest, and I'm afraid it will be difficult to change it. Moreover, Huaiyu is indeed prejudiced by family status. This is a common problem among the sons of aristocratic families, and it is also normal. In the eyes of others, Huijie is a bit of a weirdo. Su Ku recalled what Feng Ju said before and nodded in agreement. It's just a pity, Jiang Pengji was suspicious. What's a pity? That Feng San Longjuan's temperament is compatible with you, Langjun. They were both rebellious. They were born into the aristocratic families, but they did not have a high sense of identity with their social class. They had strong self-awareness. Tisk, let's not. If I abduct Huaiyu's precious younger brother, do you think Huaiyu will hate me? Su Ku was silent. Thinking of Feng Jin's younger brother complex, he felt that it was hard to say. Jiang Pengji brought Su Ku around the night market. They bought big and small bags of gifts. Not only did they hang all over her hands, but they also hung a lot around her neck. Fang Pangzi, who had been beaten up by Jiang Pengji, limped home with the help of the thugs. Before he even stepped into the house, he was already bawling with tears and snot in his eyes. Chapter 360. On the other side, General Fang had just become a high-ranking official, and his wallet was filled up again. He hummed a tune and drank the tea happily. Just when he was so happy that he forgot himself, a ghastly wail and wolf howl exploded in his ears. Clang! His hand shook, and the teacup lid fell to the ground, and the tea stained his clothes. What's going on, my little ancestor? General Fang felt sorry for the exquisite tea set, but at the same time he was troubled by the wailing outside. Children's debts, children's debts. Ever since he gave birth to this son, his head was full of lawsuits. General Fang despised this son, but at the same time he loved him dearly. When he looked up, he saw a bloated fellow crawling in from outside the door. This scared General Fang. Go, 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 what demon or evil god? General Fang was so scared that he shrunk his neck. He was not to be blamed for being timid. The person's face was bruised and swollen, and there were 2 purplish circles around his eyes. There were 2 thin red bloodstains under his nostrils, and he looked like a small snake. Looking from afar, he looked like a bloated man with a pig's brain. This monster was speaking in a voice that he was very familiar with. General Fang was stunned. Wasn't this his son's voice? Father, your son's heart is bitter. Fang Pangzi struggled to push away the servant who was supporting him and crawled to his father pitifully. At this moment, General Fang had to face the truth. This unlucky child who was beaten into a pig's head was really his son. Daddy's sweetheart, how did you become like this? He wanted to hold his son's face to see where he was hurt, but he didn't know where he touched the wound. Fong Pengzi grimaced in pain, and General Fong didn't dare to act rashly. Fong Pengzi's tears and mucus flowed down his face. "Father, it's that damned Huang Song who bullied me again." General Fong was instantly enraged when he heard this. He flipped the tea table beside him with a slap. "How dare you? How dare a eunuch's grandson touch my son? I want to ask, how did that eunuch Huang Tan teach his grandson?" General Fong was so angry that he could not stop breathing. His own son was beaten by a eunuch's grandson. Where could he put his face? Fong Pengzi continued to weep and wipe away the snot and tears on his face with his right hand. "Father, it's not just Huang Song. There are other bastards." Fong Pengzi had always looked down on Huang Song. No one was more noble than the other, but he was the one who could become the disciple of a great scholar. But the two of them had their fair share of conflicts in private. Some of them had won, and some of them had lost. However, this was the first time they had suffered such a huge loss. Who else besides Huang Song? General Fong had a fierce face, and his palms, which were as big as a cattail leaf fan, were covered with thick calluses. Coupled with his burly and obese body and his fierce expression, he looked somewhat dignified. But everyone knew that General Fong was of humble birth. Before he became Marquis Chen, he was a street peddler. Fong Pengzi said vaguely, "There's another kid. I don't know where he came from." General Fong was silent for a while. Although he felt sorry for his son, he was not blind. There was something wrong with Fong Pengzi's attitude. It was obvious that he was hiding something. This made him more cautious. He simply called his son's lackey over and asked him in detail. After a detailed inquiry, General Fong almost clutched his chest and breathed his last. "Evil creature! Who asked you to provoke them?" The Fong family of Xiangyang was an existence that even the emperor was wary of. Who gave this kid the guts to do so? However, the Fong family had already retired. There was no one in the court, so there was no need to be too afraid. General Fong was not worried about the Fong family. He was worried about Lu Shi and Chongzhou. Fortunately, his son did not really bully Lu Shi's son. If he had really stripped Lu Shi's clothes, the whole of Dongqing would be turned upside down. Fong Pengzi was indignant. "Did I get beaten up by Huang Song for nothing? You got beaten up. Can't you find a chance to fight back? Aren't you usually quite capable?" General Fong was so angry that his beard curled up. Fong Pengzi was speechless. He had no problem sneaking up on Huang Song, but he really could not beat Jiang Pengji. "If you don't get back at me, I'll look for my aunt to get justice for me." The aunt that Fong Pengzi mentioned was the Empress, the Crown Prince's mother. When General Fong heard this, he was infuriated. Outsiders did not know, but how could he not know? His sister did not come from a good family background and did not have outstanding looks. Ever since she gave birth to the Crown Prince, she did not have much love left. The emperor was also greedy and lecherous. There was no shortage of young and beautiful women by his side. The old and fading empress was invisible in the emperor's harem. If the emperor did not need to promote his relatives, the crown prince would still be alive. Perhaps the empress would have been dethroned. "Stop! You evil creature, come back here!" Army General Fong stretched out his huge palm and directly dragged his son back, lest he really ran to the empress to complain. "I can't take this lying down." Fong Pengzi struggled. In the end, he simply sat on the ground and stretched out his legs to make a scene. "You don't love me anymore." General Fong's expression turned purple from holding back his anger. In the end, he had no choice but to go to the emperor to complain because he really felt sorry for his son. However, Fong Pengzi was one step too late. Huang Song was very cunning. He knew that this matter could not be solved easily, so he complained to his adoptive grandfather early on and explained everything clearly. The grandfather and grandson quickly finalized a plan. They gave the emperor a heads-up in advance and pushed the blame to Fong Pengzi. As mentioned before, the emperor liked eunuchs more than relatives who had a big appetite. In his opinion, this was just a small matter. Wasn't it normal for two juniors to have a conflict? Secretary Huang had just given the heads-up when General Fong went to the palace to complain. This behavior made him very unhappy. In terms of figuring out the emperor's will, how could General Feng compare to Huang Tan, who served the emperor? In the end, the father and son of the Feng family were disgraced. Huang Song had achieved a small victory, but his friend Feng Ju did not have it so easy. Feng Jin would not make a scene, nor would he scold him. However, he would stare at him coldly and exert mental pressure. Under such cold violence, Feng Ju gradually could not sit still anymore. What's so good about Huang Song? Feng Jin opened his mouth slowly when the hot tea was cold. You and I both know that the 9 states and 5 countries will not be stable for many years. We don't know when the world will be in chaos and heroes will rise. But tell me, what capital does Huang Song have to compete? More importantly, what capital did Huang Song have to make Feng Ju look favorably on him? Brother, you have a better future by yourself than by investing in Huang Song. Speaking of connections, Huang Song's adoptive grandfather was a eunuch. He had more enemies than friends in the court. Speaking of money, Huang Tan had made a lot of money by selling official titles. Otherwise, he would not have been able to buy an official position for Huang Song at such a high price. But did the Feng family lack money? Speaking of official positions, Huang Song was the patrol officer of Shangjing, which was bought at a high price. It sounded nice, but his duties were similar to those of urban management. He was only in charge of trivial matters. Speaking of fief, there was no need to consider this question. Feng Ju wanted to dodge it, but Feng Jin would not let him go so easily. Chapter 361. Connections, wealth, status, official title, territory. In Feng Ju's opinion, these were all external things. If one managed them well, they would naturally be there. A low starting point did not mean that one was destined to fail. If the person one was loyal to was a pig, even if one earned mountains of gold and oceans of silver, it would all be wasted in the end. On the contrary, if one had a godly teammate, even if one was poor, one would still succeed in the end. Feng Ju knew this very well. When choosing people, one did not look at the other party's conditions, but only at their temperament and ability. Seeing that Feng Ju intended to discuss in detail, Feng Jin restrained his negative emotions and maintained a fair and objective attitude. What do you mean? Feng Ju said, I've tested Bogeo a few times. Other than his slightly criticized background, he has no other shortcomings. He has the heart to stabilize the country, and he also has a heart to pity the people. He is not restricted by family background when choosing people, and he does not have the problem of being headstrong and self-opinionated. I think he is quite good. Now that the world was rotten to the core, the only way was to rebuild and reshuffle all the forces. Taking advantage of the chaotic world, they could promote a bold and loving ruler. Only then could they usher in a truly prosperous era. Otherwise, the world would just have a different surname. Feng Ju had a good plan, and Feng Jin could understand his desire, but he still laughed coldly and poured cold water on his younger brother. Now that Huang Song is poor, his true temperament is still uncertain. Other than his mouth, what else does he have? As long as he understands what you like, what can't he say? Feng Jin was sullen. Even if Huang Song was indeed a good candidate, he should not have decided so early. At least he had to wait and see. You said that Huang Song has many merits, but in my opinion he is not as reliable as Lanting. Feng Ju frowned. Although he had heard his elder brother mention Jiang Pingji, such praise was rare. Elder brother, you think highly of him? Feng Ju asked. Although he had different views from his elder brother, he trusted his brother's judgment. If even a picky person like Feng Jin said it was good, there must be no problem. Feng Ju did not know much about Lu Shi. Putting aside his character and temperament, his external conditions were indeed much better than Huang Song's. He was born into an aristocratic family, and his father, Lu Shi, was the governor of Chongzhou. He had a ready-made territory. Even if Chongzhou was close to the 3 tribes of the northern borderline, the terrain was steep, and it was near strong enemies, it was still considered a place to settle down and have a foundation. Not only that, but Lu Shi had also studied in Langyi for 3 years, which was a famous institution of higher learning in the world. No matter how Lu Shi's results in the academy were, after 3 years, He had been gilded with a layer of gold. Not to say that he was knowledgeable, but at least he was better than Huang Song, who was half illiterate. When the two of them were put side by side, Huang Song did not have the slightest ability to resist in terms of external conditions. Feng Jin's expression froze. After a while, he understood the hidden meaning behind his brother's question. After a long time, he shook his head. Lanting is not that ambitious. It's impossible. Lu Shi was indeed a good person. Everything about him was good, except for his gender. He was born a girl. Feng Jin was not bound by the prejudice of the world, but he had never thought of letting a woman ascend to the throne. It was simply unbelievable. Feng Ju instinctively felt that his elder brother was lying, but he also understood Feng Jin's attitude. A long journey tests a horse's stamina, and time reveals a man's heart. It's better to be cautious about this kind of thing that will cost you your life. Feng Jin's expression softened a lot, and he advised his younger brother, "I'm not stopping you, nor am I biased against Huang Song. I just hope that you can be more cautious about this kind of thing. The world is not completely chaotic yet, and it's still too early to make any plans. Why not watch from the sidelines and wait for the situation to change?" To put it bluntly, it was still too early to get involved. Feng Ju pursed his thin lips, and his hands on his knees slightly clenched. His heart was full of struggle. Apart from this, if you think that Huang Song is a worthy friend, then treat him as an ordinary friend. Don't get too involved. It was better to let it go. His younger brother was a stubborn brat. The more Feng Jin tried to stop him, the more he might do something extreme in a moment of hot-headedness. He might completely run to Huang Song's boat and not get off. Instead of that, it was better for both sides to take a step back. Starting with a friend who could get along as an equal would also give Feng Ju more time to think about Huang Song's character and carefully consider his own future. "I understand." Feng Ju sighed softly. His relationship with Huang Song was not so good that they could wear the same underwear. Naturally, his brother was more important. As the two brothers spoke, a series of slow but heavy footsteps came from afar. After a while, a gentle female voice was heard. "Husband, what are you talking about? Why are you so intimate?" A few years had passed, and Wei Jingxian, who was already a wife, was no longer as immature as before. Her eyes were gentle and full of the charm of a mature woman. Now, he had a big belly, and his whole face was a lot more plump. He looked more plump than before. Pregnancy was tough, but she had a good mentality. The servant took good care of her, so she was more energetic than before. Feng Jin looked at her belly and his eyebrows twitched. He quickly got up and went forward to support her. He was also afraid. Every time he saw her big belly, he felt his whole body heavy, and his nerves could not help but tense up. "Second sister-in-law, come and control second brother." Feng Ju bowed and waited for Feng Jin and his brother to sit down before sitting down again. He complained half-truthfully, "Second brother and I haven't seen each other for a long time. We should be catching up with each other, but he just won't let go of his studies and wants to test us." Wei Jingxian pinched her handkerchief and covered her mouth with a chuckle. "Husband often says that youngest brother is talented and smart, but he may not be able to test you. Second sister-in-law is really good at talking. It's comfortable to hear. Unlike second brother, who only reprimands and reprimands." Feng Jin glared at him, and the two brothers exchanged a few glances. As they grew older, the relationship between Feng Jin and Feng Ju gradually became tense. Wei Jingxian found out not long after she married into the family, but she could not say much due to her identity. She could only try to ease their relationship. "I've prepared some light wine and dishes. I wonder if husband and youngest brother will do us the honor? You're heavy. You can leave these small things to the servants in the future. You don't have to do it yourself." Feng Jin urged her earnestly, but whether Wei Jingxian was willing to do it or not was not something he could decide. They brewed tea, boiled wine, and drank 2 cups with exquisite dishes. The two enjoyed the meal and temporarily forgot about what happened just now. Feng Ju secretly looked at the heavy second sister-in-law, then looked at second brother, who was frowning slightly. His heart softened. It was better for him to listen to his second brother's advice and observe the situation from the sidelines for now. The sky was dark. Feng Ju stayed in the guest room, and Feng Jin and his wife also prepared to sleep. Before going to bed, Feng Jin suddenly thought of something. It's the wedding of the fourth prince and the daughter of the Lu family's concubine. It's reasonable for us to give them a small gift. Wei Jingxian touched her belly and did not react for a moment. Feng Jin said again, the daughter of the Lu family's concubine is Lanting's sister. Although they were not relatives, Feng Jin and Lu Shi were good friends, and he was also a friend with Wu Majun, so he should give him a gift. Chapter 362. The governor of Lu province is busy. As the second son, Lanting has to send his sister off. Feng Jin turned around and sighed. But she shouldn't have come at this time. I don't know if she can get out of this mess. Wei Jingxian wanted to say something but stopped. The room was dark, so Feng Jin didn't notice the hesitation on her face. He didn't hear Wei Jingxian's reply for a long time. He reached out and touched her tight belly. Is the child bothering you again? They had been married for 2 to 3 years. He knew Wei Jingxian's stubborn temper. When she was still young, her legs would always cramp at night. She didn't want to disturb his rest, so she gritted her teeth and endured it. Towards such a wife, Feng Jin loved and respected her, and the relationship between the two steadily improved. No. I just suddenly thought of the past and felt a little emotional. Past? Feng Jin rarely heard his wife talk about the past. He smiled and asked, is it related to Lanting? Wei Jingxian secretly bit her lips with a troubled look on her face. She didn't know that Feng Jin already knew Lu Shi's gender. Even if Feng Jin and Lu Shi were friends, she was Lu Shi's former fiancée. She had been engaged since she was a child. Wei Jingxian couldn't figure out Feng Jin's attitude towards this matter, so she had always avoided mentioning Lu Shi. Wei Jingxian hesitated and tried to sound calm. Yes, it's related. I loved to eat when I was young, so I was round and a little fat. But I was naughty and couldn't calm down. I wanted to avoid the maids and play everywhere. One day, when no one was looking, I climbed up the pear tree outside the courtyard. I climbed up but couldn't get down. I cried for a long time. Feng Jin smiled. And then? I don't know if it's because children are similar in nature. The maids looked for me and almost cried, but Lanting found me. I was worried that I would be punished by the elders in the family, so they didn't let me ask the adults for help. But I didn't dare to go down. I couldn't do anything, so she said she wanted to be my cushion. She said she would take responsibility if I fell. Wei Jingxian smiled mischievously. Madam must have been very cute when you were young. What happened after you jumped down? Was you safe and sound? Since it was round and smooth, it must have hit Lu Shi when it jumped down. Thinking of that scene, Feng Jin felt inexplicably pleased. Wei Jingxian said, I'm fine, but Lanting's muscles and bones have been hurt. Feng Jin held back his laughter and teased, if that's the case, I should prepare a small gift for Lanting tomorrow to thank her for her kindness. Wei Jingxian was startled. She thought that Feng Jin was angry, but he didn't sound angry at all. She probed and said half-truthfully, could it be that my husband is jealous? Feng Jin asked suspiciously, why should your husband be jealous? He was jealous of a girl. Was he that kind of person? No. At this moment, Feng Jin's smart brain realized that the couple was talking about the same thing. He could not help but laugh. Wei Jingxian was also dumbfounded. She didn't understand what was so funny about her words. Go to sleep. It's rare that the child isn't bothering you. Have a good sleep. Feng Jin kept his smile and did not explain to Wei Jingxian. The couple did not speak for a night and slowly fell asleep. Nowadays, Shangjing was in a state of panic. The ordinary people did not know the inside story and continued to live ordinary lives. It was as if they were living in a peaceful era. The intrigues of the nobles did not affect them at all. Only those with a keen sense of smell could discover the undercurrents under the calm surface. It was not until Wu Majun's wedding that the calm surface began to show a slight, invisible crack. Apart from the wedding of Princess Xianxia and the second prince a few years ago, this wedding was a rare joyous occasion for the Dongqing royal family. The gimmick of a royal wedding was very attractive to the audience in the live streaming room. Wah milk, #rubbing face. It's the streamer's sister getting married. Why am I so nervous as if it's my own wedding? Yang Kuaixin. The person above feels the same. I'm very nervous too. The streamer did not attend the second prince's wedding. Now that the person getting married is the streamer's sister, she can watch the ancient royal wedding in person. If she watches it, it's the same as us watching it. There was no feudal empire in the audience's dimension. The royal family was an unfamiliar word to the ordinary people. With their limited imagination, they could not imagine how grand an empire's wedding would be. During the few days when her sister was getting married, Jiang Pingji was very low-key. She stayed in the residence most of the time and only went out to visit a few times. Most of the people she visited were Lu Shi's friends in the officialdom. The content of the conversation was also boring and had no nutritional value. It was like the calm before the storm. As the date of the wedding approached, the atmosphere in the whole of Shangjing became more and more strange. Early that morning, Jiang Pingji started the live streaming. 150,000 viewers flooded in instantly. With Taksha's help, Jiang Pingji washed her hands carefully and put on a festive dress. She glanced at the bullet screen in the live streaming room and smiled faintly. Host V, am I handsome? As soon as she posted the bullet screen, her fans responded one after another. Various amounts of gifts flowed in like water. Therefore, Jiang Pingji, who was elegant and more handsome than the groom, was ready to go. She picked up the sandalwood fan in her hand and prepared to make things difficult for the groom. The wedding customs in Dongqing were like that. If the groom wanted to marry the bride, he had to go through 81 difficulties. In the words of the audience in the live streaming room, it was actually making trouble for the groom. However, compared to the vulgar behavior that the audience in the live streaming room complained about, making trouble in the current era was very elegant and difficult. Jiang Pingji chose a good angle. The audience in the live streaming room was dumbfounded. Dora Aming. I always feel that if the single men went to the era of the host, they were destined to be single for the rest of their lives. There were many obstacles. Not only did they test the four arts, but they also required the groom to recite poetry, dance, and play with ink. They taught him about the classics and history. Because Wuma Jun was a prince, it was inevitable that he would go easy on the groom. These tests were set in advance. He had the strategy. No matter how difficult or tricky the questions were, he could solve them easily. The high-spirited Wuma Jun had passed through many obstacles. His elegant demeanor and excellent literary talent had left a good impression on him. Every time he passed a challenge, there would always be people cheering and praising him. If one did not know better, one would think that Wuma Jun was the reincarnation of when Xing Jiang Pingji was in charge of the last challenge. The luxurious and exquisite house behind her was the place where Lu Huan would get married. Only with Jiang Pingji's permission could Wuma Jun escort the bride away. That was the most exciting moment of the wedding. Landing, please. Wuma Jun was not interested in Lu Huan. After all, she was young and her bones had not even developed. What was interesting about her? Chapter 363. Jiang Pingji nodded slightly, took a deep breath, and said sadly, "My sister is spoiled at home, so it's inevitable that she'll be a little willful. Xianxia, if you marry her, please forgive her. Now that the auspicious moment is here, I won't be the bad guy. I just need you to promise me one thing, that you'll treat her the same for the rest of your life, regardless of her status. If you promise me this, as her brother, I'll be at ease and entrust her to you." Wuma Jun solemnly bowed and said, "Don't worry, Lanting. I'll never let her down for the rest of my life." "That's good." Jiang Pingji turned to the side, her eyes filled with reluctance. Wuma Jun was secretly happy he had passed this hurdle. Even though she didn't make things difficult for Wuma Jun, her concern for his sister's lifelong happiness still moved many people. Even if they didn't say anything on the surface, they couldn't help but sigh in their hearts. What a good heart. It was normal for an older brother to dislike his brother-in-law, but would his sister be happy if he kept making things difficult for his brother-in-law? His brother-in-law was broad-minded, so he naturally wouldn't mind his brother-in-law making things difficult for him. If his brother-in-law was narrow-minded, he might implicate his sister. The wedding had already progressed to this stage, so it was impossible to go back on it. No matter how his brother-in-law made things difficult for him, his sister was already his. Instead of racking his brains to make things difficult for him, it was better to earnestly instruct his brother-in-law. With such imagination, Jiang Pingji's image as a good brother suddenly became three-dimensional. The audience in the streaming room watched the scene on the screen and couldn't help but complain. Lao Cg Lianmeng, haha, if I didn't know the inside story, I might have really been fooled by the streamer's acting. What good brother? This guy is simply a beast in human form, okay? Mai has a voice. Although I know it's fake, I give 82 points for the streamer's performance just now and give the rest to her in the form of 666. Even though I know she's showing off her acting skills, I still feel that this is a good brother who thinks for his sister. He can't help but let his sister get married, but he has to bear the pain and think for his sister's sake. He can only watch helplessly as the outsider takes away the soft and fragrant girl. Can hear the voice not, "Bah, your imagination is too good." The host is obviously a hypocrite wearing a white lotus, but in your imagination, she is a cute siscon. The shameful thing is, I actually believed in your nonsense. Jiang Pingji did not care about the ridicule that flooded the bullet screen. She stared blankly at Lu Huan, who was being supported by the matron of honor. Dongqing's wedding attire was different from what the audience in the live streaming room knew. Although the surrounding attire was a festive red, the groom's wedding attire was a very heavy black. The bride's wedding attire was mainly green and purplish. The clothes were layered, and the colors were from the inside to the outside, from light to dark. Due to the different status of the newlyweds, there was a strict classification of wedding clothes. The Empress was the most precious. There were a total of 18 levels, and the colors and patterns of each level were strictly regulated. As the princess consort of the prince, Lu Huan's wedding dress was only lower than that of the Empress and the crown princess. Her rank was higher than that of the prince's, and she had to wear a total of 12 layers. Nowadays, there were no phoenix coronets and robes that the audience in the live streaming room was familiar with. There was also no such thing as a red veil. However, when Lu Huan carefully walked out, Jiang Pingji clearly saw that the bullet screen in the live streaming room had all turned into exclamation marks. Hairpins, ornaments, each of them had 12 as their number. Her ink-like hair was tied up high and adorned with a gorgeous jade crown. Perfect flowers carved from jade adorned her hair. She was as charming as a real flower that had just been plucked from a branch. The pearls and jade on her head were dazzling. Some of the more knowledgeable audience members wanted to take a screenshot of the scene and zoom in to take a closer look at the ornaments on Lu Huan's head. Every time he recognized one of them, his heart would twitch. Finally, some of the audience members lamented. "How is this a wedding? This is simply putting the most precious thing on her head, and it's so beautiful. Ingyang Kuaixian, I really want to hold a wedding like this. I wonder if Taoyang will release a luxurious wedding package after today's live streaming? If there is, I must drag my boyfriend to take a photo of it. I feel that it's more pretentious than a wedding dress." Can hear the voice not, Taoyang is omnipotent. After Su Ke's wedding, one of Taoyang's wedding stores immediately released the same package. I checked the sales later. It's selling 45,000 sets a month. It's really popular. Jiang Pingji's sharp eyes saw the contents of the bullet screen. She secretly raised her eyebrows. A businessman is indeed a businessman. He's good at grasping business opportunities. Lao Cg Lianmeng, that wedding company? The simplified version costs $99.99. I saw the customer's reply and I almost died laughing. Look at how beautiful Su Ke and Xuanmei are. They will be together forever. But the buyer's show is simply a joke between a married couple. At this time, another audience member ridiculed. Grapevine Jiazi Dolai, I agree with the person above. Do you know how expensive the wedding ornaments on the streamer's sister's head are? I'm in this line of work. Calculating the current market price, it's at least in the hundreds of millions. How can Taoyang's imitations, which cost a few dollars, be auctioned off for hundreds of millions? That's just the headwear. It doesn't include the cost of the wedding dress. Even so, there were still some greedy audience members who went to search for Taoyang. When the keywords were entered, a few pages of information immediately popped up. Unbeknownst to Jiang Pingji, this strange streaming room had created a huge storm in their dimension. Many industries had been born and many unemployed people had been saved. Of course, after these people became rich, they did not forget to reward Jiang Pingji. The streaming room was noisy. Jiang Pingji saw that there were too many bullet screen comments. She simply blocked them for a while. She raised her hand and took Lu Huan's hand. In the future, you will marry into the royal family and live a good life. If you suffer any grievances, you must tell your brother, Jiang Pingji said sadly. Her tone was a little choked and full of reluctance. Those who heard it were very touched. Lu Huan was vigilant, but she also knew that she could not undermine Jiang Pingji. She bowed to Jiang Pingji. Her eyes were filled with tears. Brother, take care. Facing Jiang Pingji, who was an Oscar winner, Wu Majun and Lu Huan were at most popular actresses who had won the Newcomer Award. Their acting skills could be seen at a glance. Especially when Jiang Pingji was showing off her acting skills at that moment, and Lu Huan was absent-minded. Naturally, she was at a disadvantage. A royal wedding was naturally different from an ordinary one. If it was an ordinary person, the procedure would take a long time, but Wu Majun was a prince. He had the upper hand. He easily welcomed the bride, Lu Huan, onto the luxurious wedding sedan that was carried by 8 people. He then mounted the horse in high spirits. Although the scale of the wedding was not comparable to that of Princess Xianxia, the bride, Lu Huan's dowry was talked about enthusiastically by the people of Shangjing. 10 miles of red makeup, it lived up to its name. There were 100 tables of banquets in front of the 4th prince's residence. There was a dazzling array of seafood, delicacies, and exotic fruits. Although the cuisine in ancient times was not as developed as in the streaming room, they had sufficient ingredients. In their world, the protected wild animals, national protected animals, and world-class protected animals. In this era, as long as it was edible, it could all be served on the table. Coupled with the meticulous cooking of famous chefs and all kinds of lifelike carvings, it was simply gorgeous. There were 100 tables of banquets. As a member of the bride's family, Jiang Pingji naturally had to be treated as a distinguished guest. Chapter 364. Leng Jun, you can't bear to part with the second Yangzi? Su Ke had already left his lowly status and found a seat in the corner as Lu Shi's right-hand man. He was eating delicious food. Seeing Jiang Pingji's unhappy expression, he was afraid that she would do something against the rules, so he secretly tested her. Why would I be reluctant? Jiang Pingji glanced at him and said, I just suddenly remembered something. A few years ago, the second prince and the princess of the northern borderline got married, and Shangjing was just as lively. It was a world of ice and snow, and 100 banquets were held. The atmosphere was heated. Now that I think about it, it coincides with today's scene. Su Ke was silent. Of course, he knew what happened that year. Shangjing had a severe snowstorm, but the wedding of the second prince and the princess of the northern borderline was still lively. 100 banquets were held for 9 days and 9 nights, but almost no one touched the food. In a world of ice and snow, the food was not tasty when it was cold. Not far away, people starved to death. The back of the second prince's mansion was full of food and buckets of swill. Thinking about these things, it would be strange if his Lang Jun could be happy. The 100 banquets were supposed to be a joyous occasion for the whole city, for the people, for the celebration of the new couple. In fact, ordinary people could not even get close to it, let alone sit at the table. Lang Jun, today is the second Nyangzi's big day. Even if you sigh, you should be happy. After being interrupted, Su Ke suddenly lost his appetite to eat. Like Su Ke, the bridegroom also lost his appetite. Wu Majun was forced to drink 2 glasses of wine as a gesture. He walked into the bridal chamber with a faint smell of alcohol. Night had fallen, But when he looked at the bride sitting by the bed, with her young face and dry body, he could not arouse any sexual interest at all. The maid helped Lu Huan wash off her makeup and remove her heavy headwear. Without the concealment of heavy makeup, her face looked even more youthful and tender. Even if her facial features were very good and one could tell at a glance that she was a beauty with unlimited potential in the future, Lu Huan was still too young. She looked like an unripe fruit. How could she be eaten? Wuma Jun was unwilling, but that was the wedding procedure. Not wanting to consummate their marriage was akin to slapping the bride in the face. If Lu Huan's family found out, who knew what kind of rumors would spread? Lu Huan timidly glanced at her husband, her face instantly flushed with embarrassment. Wuma Jun was not a gentleman, but he was very thick-skinned. He was the best at deceiving ignorant girls. The two of them drank the nuptial wine. Even though the alcohol content of the wine was not high, Lu Huan felt a little dizzy. Her whole body felt as if she was walking on cotton, light as a feather. Wuma Jun secretly frowned, his pursed lips tightened. According to the customs of the royal family, some drugs would be added to the nuptial wine to help the newlyweds get rid of their shyness and unfamiliarity so that they could enter the bridal chamber. Lu Zhai could not taste it, but Wuma Jun, who had been through hundreds of battles and was not afraid of meat or vegetables, could taste it. Wuma Jun said considerately, "You must be hungry. Let's eat something before we settle down." Although Lu Huan was young, being young had its own taste. Anyway, he was not the one who was at a disadvantage. Lu Huan's ears heated up. She shyly nodded and secretly tightened her grip on a bottle in her sleeves. She had asked someone to secretly search for this thing in the little slut Huijuan's room. Huijun was mysterious and took this thing very seriously. Lu Huan, who had persecutory delusions, thought that this was something Huijun used to harm her. However, after the doctor examined it, he said that it was a pregnancy aid medicine. Lu Huan did not believe it and secretly invited a few doctors to examine it. The conclusion they came to was the same. It was harmless to the body. Many precious medicines were used to help a woman get pregnant. At first, Lu Huan did not want to use this thing, but she could not help but be tempted. After that, she quietly ground some medicinal powder and mixed it with food. After a few transfers, she gave it to a woman who did odd jobs. She had been married for 3 years and had been abandoned by her husband. Her status in the family was worrying. Lu Huan ordered her trusted servant girl to secretly bribe a cook. The cook took advantage of the night to secretly defile the woman. After a month, she actually had a pulse of pregnancy. This all happened on the way to Shangjing. It was done secretly and carefully, so it did not arouse suspicion. Lu Huan was determined to capture her husband's heart and gain a foothold in the fourth prince's residence. Naturally, she valued children. When she was having breakfast this morning, she had already secretly consumed the easy pregnancy pill and gotten someone to send Huijun some food mixed with cold elements. In this way, she did not believe that she would not be able to give birth to a son before Huijun. Lu Huan and Wuma Jun ate some food. She said charmingly, "It's late. Husband, do you want to settle down?" Perhaps it was the nuptial wine that had taken effect. Wuma Jun felt his whole body heat up. He nodded in agreement and carried her to the wedding bed. After a round of sex, the medicinal effect in Wuma Jun's body had subsided. He got up and called for the servants to prepare hot soup. He looked at Lu Huan, who was sleeping soundly in his arms with traces of tears on her face. He secretly pouted. Her shriveled body was like a man's. "Your servant will serve your highness as you bathe." Wuma Jun was feeling that this wedding night was extremely boring. A refreshing fragrance wafted into his nose, causing his abdomen to tighten. When he listened carefully, the woman's voice seemed to be scratching his heart. It was itchy and made his heart tremble. Come in," Wuma Jun answered vaguely. A graceful figure walked out from behind the curtain with a basin of water in her hands. Her steps were light and graceful. Her clothes were clean and neat, and there was not the slightest bit of extra embellishment in her hair. She was like a beautiful lotus flower standing in the cool breeze, but her starry eyes were captivating, as if they could hook away one's soul. Her plump lips were red without any makeup, making one want to lean forward and taste them. What's your name? The other party seemed to be confused by the rude question. She lowered her head and said timidly, Your servant's name is Hui Jun. Good name. Wuma Jun's eyes were glued to her full and perky chest. He asked again, Are you a servant girl in the residence? No, your servant is the second Nangzi, the fourth imperial concubine's dowry. Towards the end, she was practically biting her lower lip as she spoke. A dowry girl had the duty to serve the male master. After Wuma Jun heard this, his eyes lit up. However, he was a hypocrite. He could not hug her directly. Instead, he put on airs and asked, Why haven't I seen you before? Hui Jun said, Tonight is the wedding night of your highness and the imperial concubine. At the mention of this, Wuma Jun was in a slightly bad mood. However, when he thought of the peerless beauty in front of him, his lower abdomen could not help but tighten. Come here and help me bathe. Yes. Hui Jun soaked a towel in hot water. Just as she was about to help him wipe his back, he suddenly grabbed her wrist. Wuma Jun felt as if he was grabbing a soft and boneless hand. The skin was smoother and smoother than a peeled egg. As the two of them got closer, the seeping fragrance became clearer. Chapter 365. Wuma Jun did not pretend to be a gentleman. He directly dragged her into the bathtub and engulfed Hui Jun's cries of surprise and protests. That night, he truly knew the wonderful feeling of yin and yang harmonizing. Even his soul was trembling. He seemed to have unlimited energy. He tossed and turned Hui Jun. He could not enjoy himself to his heart's content. He wished he could die on top of her. When the sky brightened, he could only regretfully hug the exhausted person and kiss her gently. He lamented that the night was too short. Hui Jun lay in his arms like a puddle of water. She looked tired, but her body was not so tired. She even felt refreshed. It was only then that she understood why her Lang Jun said he could make her a beauty who brought disaster to the country. She was a prostitute, but she was like a virgin last night. She even deceived Wuma Jun, who had experienced hundreds of battles. She should have hated the matter between men and women, but after the clouds and rain stopped, she only felt comfortable all over, as if she had been greatly nourished. Last night was supposed to be a good night for your highness and the princess consort, but your highness and I fooled around. If the princess consort knew, Hui Jun frowned worriedly. Her eyes seemed to bear thousands of words that she had not finished. Wuma Jun said, Don't worry. It's only right and proper for you to serve me. If she's jealous, she's not magnanimous. Hui Jun was still worried, but she nodded obediently. When Wuma Jun saw this, his heart burned with lust again. His hands could not help but move everywhere. In the past, he thought that Xianxia was a great woman. She used all kinds of tricks to serve him until he was on cloud 9. She was bold and unrestrained when it came to matters between men and women. She was very compatible with him. Now that he thought about it, compared to the peerless beauty in front of him, Princess Xianxia was like a broken bag on the ground that was leaking air in all directions. The feeling that had once fascinated him had also become nauseating. Hui Jun could make him anxious and furious without doing anything. If she was willing to give in and cooperate with him, and whisper softly, he would be as happy as a deity. One could imagine that the two of them could not help but fool around for a while. The sun was high in the sky. Lu Huan woke up from her beautiful dream. Her side was already cold. She supported her tired body and asked eagerly, Where's your highness? Her trusted maids had ugly expressions on their faces. They knelt down one after another, not daring to speak. Lu Huan had a bad premonition. When she received the news that Wuma Jun had given Hui Jun the biggest courtyard besides the main courtyard, her ashen face was almost twisted into a ball. Her newly grown nails were broken again. She was so angry that she flipped over the table beside her, causing it to crash into the ground. After the first night of the wedding, the groom, who was supposed to be intimate with the bride, was fooling around with a stunning beauty. Even though Wuma Jun had issued a gag order, the inner house was different from other places. How could it be stopped with a single order? Before the third day, the news of Wuma Jun favoring Hui Jun had secretly spread. Huijuan's appearance was also spread by gossipers. Jiang Pingji received first-hand information. She could not help but admire Huijuan's swift and decisive methods. She had seduced Wu Majun on the first day of marriage. She was very efficient. However, the livestream viewers wailed when they heard the news. Lao Ciji Lianmeng, a good and fresh cabbage has been taken by a pig. Tudu Feiqiu, my goddess has been taken by a pig. I'm crying. Headset electric current sound, F*CK, it's a breeding pig. My heart aches so much. Ling Long Mibao, although I knew this day would come, I'm still very upset. My goddess has been defiled by Wu Majun streamer, I kind of hate you now. My goddess Hui Jun, my heart hurts. There were all kinds of comments on the bullet screen. Some were wailing, some were complaining about being lovelorn, and some were criticizing Jiang Pingji. Jiang Pingji only comforted them perfunctorily. The livestream viewers became even more rowdy. Wu Majun had been caught. Would the emperor, who had no scruples, be far away? According to what Jiang Pingji knew, the emperor was absurd and unruly. Not only did he search for beauties to fill his harem, but he also coveted the wives and concubines of the ministers. It was not the first time he had forcefully taken the ministers' wives. Every time he went to the ministers' residences for a short visit, he would sleep with the ministers' wives while he was sitting. After the wedding, they still had to go home. As Lu Shi was not around, it was just a formality. At first, Wu Majun was scared witless. He was afraid that he would make Jiang Pingji unhappy if he mistreated Lu Huan. But as time went by, Jiang Pingji did not react at all. He asked his scoundrels to sound her out. The news he got made him heave a long sigh of relief. A married daughter was like spilled water, not to mention that Lu Huan was only Lu Shi's sister. The matters between husband and wife were discussed behind closed doors. No matter how wide the brother-in-law was, he could not meddle in the affairs of his younger sister and son-in-law. With this guarantee, Wu Majun treated Lu Huan with respect on the surface. But behind her back, he fooled around with Hui Jun and indulged himself in pleasure. Hui Jun slowly revealed the strong side of her character. Wu Majun almost drowned in her. He liked everything about her, including Huijuan's character. When the two of them were having sex, he even loved her strong side. How could a masochist be nurtured? Although Huijun was not the fourth princess's wife, she lived a more comfortable life than Lu Huan. She was like a precious flower that was carefully watered. She became more beautiful and fresh by the day. It also made Lu Huan jealous and sinister. In less than half a month, she had completely charmed Wu Majun and gained a foothold in the fourth prince's residence. Lu Huan could not do anything about it. The jealousy in her heart grew stronger by the day. She wanted to lay her hands on Huijun, but the woman was as cunning as a loach. Wu Majun was protecting her from the side. She, the legitimate wife of the fourth prince, was acting like a shameless concubine. This thought made her so angry that her stomach hurt. I can't touch her. Am I supposed to let this slut climb over my head and behave atrociously? Lu Huan was so angry that she twisted her handkerchief. Other than the night of the wedding, Wu Majun did not stay in her room. As the princess's wife, she had no reason to stop Wu Majun from seeking pleasure and continuing the family line. However, she could not tolerate her husband fooling around with another woman, and a woman of low birth at that. She could not take it lying down. Lu Huan was filled with hatred. If only I could get this woman out of here legitimately. However, what reason could she use to get her out of here and make Wu Majun speechless? This thought haunted her and kept her awake for the whole night. Until one day, when she was summoned to the palace to see the empress. She saw the beautiful palace maids and came up with an evil plan. In Dongqing, who had more power than the emperor, as long as she secretly match-made Huijun and the emperor and made her lose her chastity, would Huijun still have the face to pester her husband? Even Jiang Pingji did not know that the opportunity that Huijun could not find was delivered to her by Lu Huan. After Wu Majun and Lu Huan's wedding, Jiang Pingji stayed in Shangjing for more than half a month. She was about to pack her luggage and leave when she unexpectedly received a summons from Shangyang Palace. It was also the first time that Jiang Pingji saw the emperor of Dongqing up close. Faced with the sudden summons, Su Ke's expression changed drastically. Chapter 366. Su Ke said worriedly, "Lang Jun, if you encounter difficulties during this trip to the palace." Jiang Pingji was relaxed about it and said nonchalantly, "Don't worry, it's not that serious. At most, we'll just have a chat." In a sense, Jiang Pingji as a hostage was more important than other hostages. As Lu Shi's only son, as long as she was still in Shangjing and under the eyes of the emperor, Lu Shi, the magistrate of Chongzhou, would not dare to disobey. Understanding this, Jiang Pingji was not worried about the trip to Shangyang Palace. Su Ke understood the reason, and his face was as gloomy as ink. Whether it was as a citizen of Dongqing or as Jiang Pingji's right-hand man, he despised the Dongqing emperor's behavior. If the emperor was diligent and loved the people, why would he need to worry about his subordinates obeying him on the surface but disobeying him in secret? She followed the eunuch into the palace, and Jiang Pingji waited outside the palace to be summoned. Just as Jiang Pingji thought, the emperor only took some time to meet her. He chatted for a while, reminisced about his and Lu Shi's friendship, and warmly invited her to stay in Shangjing for a while. Then he rewarded her with a table of delicacies. The whole process lasted less than an hour. Jiang Pingji did not waste the opportunity. She started a semi-interactive live stream. The title was Half-Day Tour of Shangyang Palace. In Yang Kuaixian, I feel that the architecture of Shangyang Palace has some characteristics of the Qin and Han dynasties, but some places are filled with the style of the Tang dynasty. Well, no matter what, the ancient palace is indeed a treasure of human cultural heritage. It's not something a normal film city can compare to. Zhengwo Buqingjing. Please, this is the real royal palace. If the film city was 100% restored, it would have gone bankrupt long ago. It's good enough to make an imitation for you to see. Why are you so picky? If you want to see the palace, go to the Forbidden City. Ko Jiao Qi Fan. It's the Forbidden City. It's been in disrepair for years. There aren't many places on display, and there are so many tourists every day. Many places look like dilapidated buildings. Traveling during the Golden Week, every time I visit the Forbidden City, I always feel that the royal palace is nothing special. Jiang Pingji had been in this era for a few years, but it was the first time she was in such close contact with Shangyang Palace. The audience in the streaming room was even more excited. For their era, everything about the feudal dynasty aroused their curiosity and exploration. Waha, let alone the imperial garden, when I see the emperor of Dongqing, all my hopes for the emperor are shattered, okay? He had thought that he would be able to see a handsome middle-aged man with extraordinary majesty. However, the emperor of Dongqing was just a middle-aged man with heavy eye bags. He did not have the aura of an emperor. He looked wretched, as if his body had been hollowed out. It felt like even the middle-aged men dancing on the street were more energetic than him. Scan code see me. I raised both my hands and feet in agreement. It was one thing to say that he was a middle-aged wretched old man, but when she thought of all the beautiful young ladies in the palace being defiled by him, she suddenly felt disgusted, as if she was eating an apple only to find half a caterpillar's corpse. Luckily, the streamer didn't go to a harem fight. Otherwise, the thought of the streamer getting jealous over a lowly man would make me wake up from my dreams. From this, it could be seen that regardless of the era, one's face was still very important. The age, appearance, and aura of the emperor of Dongqing did not match the expectations of the audience in the streaming room. As the audience chatted, a completely different style popped up on the bullet screen. Panda Noodle House. Am I the only one who realized that we've been tricked by the streamer? The title of today's streaming was Half-Day Tour of Shangyang Palace. In fact, the streamer only took us to walk a single path. She did not stop to introduce the architectural landscape, and the duration was not even half a day. Not to mention half a day, it was only an hour. Selling dog meat with a sheep's head. When Jiang Pingji saw the bullet screen, she specially posted one and conveniently thanked the viewer. Streamer V. The current situation does not allow me to wander around Shangyang Palace. However, one day, I will open another streaming of a one-day tour of Xiangyang Palace. When that time comes, I can go wherever I want. The inner court of the palace will be unobstructed. Panda Noodle House. The content of the bullet screen seemed very ordinary, but the audience in the streaming room expressed their horror after thinking about it carefully. She was still a citizen of Dongqing. Due to the majesty of the royal family, she could only follow the eunuch who led the way. It was impossible for her to wander around Xiangyang Palace. Then, under what circumstances could she ignore this rule and walk around Xiangyang Palace unimpeded? When she became the new master of Xiangyang Palace. Having reached this conclusion, the audience in the streaming room was instantly delighted. They gave Jiang Pingji a lot of gifts, and the screen was full of 666. Lao CG Lianmeng. Streamer, I give you 101 points. I'm not afraid of you becoming arrogant even if I give you one more point. With the audience in the streaming room joking around, Jiang Pingji left unscathed. As soon as she left the palace, she saw Su Ke anxiously waiting for her. I'm fine. Let's go back in the carriage. Jiang Pingji waved her hand and ordered the groom to drive. Su Ke saw that she was calm and secretly heaved a sigh of relief. Lang Jun, did your trip go well? I was praised and ate some food. The royal chef in the palace is not as good as the chef in Wuma Jun's residence. Jiang Pingji complained. The royal chef's cooking was definitely better than the ordinary chef's, but the food prepared by the royal chef was already cold. How could it be compared to hot food? Su Ke was speechless. He suddenly could not reply. His Longjuan style was always so fresh and different. However, I can only stay in Shangjing for a while. I can't leave. Jiang Pingji shook her head and said in a low voice, the emperor is addicted to beauty. His body is strong on the outside but weak on the inside. He refuses to rest and needs to use tiger wolf medicine to keep him alive. I'm afraid he has realized that his body is not feeling well and is increasingly afraid of death. Now that he is under house arrest in Shangjing, I'm afraid he is extremely afraid of death. Even if the emperor supported the foreign relatives and the eunuchs to suppress the aristocratic families, he was still raising a tiger that would invite disaster. The aristocratic families seemed to be retreating, but they were not seriously hurt. The so-called aristocratic families all had a deeper and longer history than the royal family of Dongqing. If the emperor suddenly died, who knew if the aristocratic families would retaliate and completely turn the royal family of Dongqing into a puppet? It was probably because of this worry that the emperor gradually recalled the sons of the aristocratic families who were serving outside and used them as hostages. If Jiang Pingji was the emperor of Dongqing, faced with such a situation, she would choose an heir as soon as possible and abdicate the throne to let the dynasty's power take over smoothly. She would grant amnesty to the people and show mercy to the ministers. At the same time, she would cut off the remnants of the foreign relatives and the eunuchs to ensure that the new emperor could sit firmly on the throne. As for the threat of the aristocratic families, she would rope them in and suppress them. She would first stabilize Dongqing, which was riddled with holes. That was the best strategy. However, the current emperor obviously did not want to move. He did not want to abdicate the throne to his son while he was still alive. Chapter 367. Su Ke frowned worriedly. If what Jiang Pingji said was true, when could they leave Shangjing? Did they have to wait until the emperor passed away and the princes fought it out with Prince Changsho? By that time, the world would have already been torn apart. Jiang Pingji sneered as if she saw Su Ke's worry. We don't have to wait that long. We just have to wait for an opportunity. As long as Hui Jun got close to the emperor and bewitched him, it would not be difficult for them to leave Shangjing. But Su Ke was worried. He felt that things were not that simple. Jiang Pingji said, do you think the princes and the ambitious Prince Changsho have the patience to wait for the emperor to pass away? Su Ke felt as if he was struck by lightning. Something exploded in his mind. Lang Jun, do you mean to force the emperor to abdicate? I'm not sure. But looking at the short history of the Dongqing royal family, they have a history of murdering their parents and brothers. Jiang Pingji said sarcastically. Other than the founding emperor, the other Dongqing emperors had taken the throne through shady means. The whole world knew about this scandal. The current emperor seemed to be repeating the fate of his ancestors. His younger brother and son were eyeing him covetously. The game depended on who could not wait to make a move first. The bird that sticks out gets shot. Whoever stood out first would be the target. Compared to Su Ke's impatience, Jiang Pingji was leisurely sitting on the fishing platform. She suddenly thought of something and smiled coldly. Haste makes waste. So what if I'm under house arrest in Shangjing? The emperor doesn't have the guts to make things difficult for the aristocratic families. It's impossible to lock them up for life. We just need an opportunity to leave Shangjing safely. Before that, Xiaoyu, just treat it as a vacation in Shangjing. Don't worry. Even if the sky falls, I'll hold it up. Su Ke smiled bitterly. He felt at ease. Lang Jun, I'll definitely accompany you to the end. As soon as he finished speaking, the carriage fell into silence again. Jiang Pingji crossed her fingers and looked down. Her cold expression did not show any emotion. After the carriage traveled for a while, she suddenly asked, Xiaoyu, under what circumstances do you think the emperor will summon Prince Changshu to Shangjing? Su Ke was stunned. He thought about the question and said firmly, That's impossible. Why? Jiang Pingji asked. Su Ke answered, Everyone in the imperial court knows that Prince Changshu has formed cliques to pursue his own interests. Even if the emperor is obsessed with beauties every day and neglects the affairs of the imperial court, he cherishes his life so much. How could he summon this ambitious wolf to the capital? If that's the case, wouldn't that be inviting a wolf into the house? Yeah, I think so too. Jiang Pingji nodded in agreement. She did not see any good points in the emperor, but he had countless flaws. Although the emperor was muddle-headed now, he could kill the former emperor and ascend the throne from King Gongshun of Hejian County. He couldn't be a complete idiot. If he was sane, why would he summon Prince Changshu to the capital at such a critical time? Su Ke asked her, Lang Jun, why do you suddenly ask? I suddenly remembered what a friend told me before I left, Jiang Pingji said calmly. After saying that, a figure that was tall and straight like a pine appeared in his mind. Wei Ci was not someone who spoke without thinking. Since he asked her to guard against Prince Changshu accepting the edict and bringing troops into the capital, there must be a reason for it. Su Ke thought about it repeatedly and frowned. If it's true, there might be three possibilities. First, the emperor's favorite candidate is not one of his 4 sons, but the youngest son of the former emperor, Prince Changshu. But thinking about what happened in the past few years, the possibility of this guess is almost zero. Second, if something unforeseen happens in Shangjing, the 100,000 imperial guards will be useless, and the emperor will have no choice but to summon Prince Changshu. However, the probability of the 2 possibilities that Su Ke mentioned happening was too low. It was almost not within the scope of consideration. What's the third possibility? Su Ke said, Fake the emperor's will. Jiang Pingji's heart skipped a beat. Fake the emperor's will is indeed a way. Shangjing was now a huge cage. Jiang Pingji's ears and eyes were sharp. She acutely noticed that the area where the high officials and nobles lived was filled with a large number of spies. These spies disguised themselves as manservants, maids, or merchants from all walks of life. They were watching them 24 hours a day. When they were close to the mansion, Jiang Pingji glanced at Su Ke and stopped him from speaking. The two stepped on the bench and got off the carriage one after another. They returned to the mansion with their usual expressions. At that moment, the audience in the streaming room also smelled something unusual. They kept asking questions. Doraemon, host, can't you leave Shangjing for now? Lao Cg Lianmeng, host, they seem to be under house arrest. The emperor of Dongqing is courting death as long as he is alive. To Defeicio, I bet 50 cents that according to the host's petty temper, she will definitely find a way to take revenge. Most of the audience were ordinary onlookers. They had no problem watching the show, but when it came to such brain-burning things, their reactions were slower. The audience in the streaming room seemed to have a kind of blind trust in Jiang Pingji. After following the streaming for a few years, they had never seen anyone who could really make Jiang Pingji suffer a loss. Even if there was, it was just a joke. The host was broad-minded and did not take it to heart. Of course, there were many people who objected. Zai Chili Diao, nonsense. Are you all crazy? The host has no scholarly honor now. Even if she has a powerful father, water from afar can't put out the fire at hand. If the emperor of a feudal dynasty wants to lay his hands on her, can she go to heaven? Shinshou Yangtua. Yes, I like this streaming room the most. I can always see hundreds of thousands of idiots praising an ordinary host. Lao Cg Lianming. Hee, I can see that there are indeed many experts in this streaming room. Who still remembers the host's skills? Even if she can't fly on roofs and vault over walls, at least she can leave Shangjing safely. It was not a matter of whether she would leave or not, but when she would leave. Jiang Pengji did not care about the bullet screens that were worrying about her or slandering her. When it came to strength, it was all empty talk. Only when it was done would it be real. Although it was house arrest, apart from not being able to leave the city, there was no restriction on her personal freedom. In fact, she was quite happy. After more than half a month, Jiang Pengji and Shangjing's chief patrol officer Huang Song, coincidentally, met a few times. After a while, they became friends. Feng Ju, a mischievous child, came along. The three of them often drank tea and watched dramas. The place where they drank tea and watched dramas was naturally not suitable for children. Feng Jin, who knew about this, was speechless. She leaned against the table leisurely. A row of musicians was playing and singing in the corner of the room. The song was so sweet that it went straight to the heart. Jiang Pengji peeled peanuts and stuffed them into her mouth one by one. Chapter 368. It was already the middle of June. Jiang Pengji had already changed into cool summer clothes. With Lu Huan's wedding as the deadline, Jiang Pengji had stayed in Shangjing for almost a month and a half. The weather is getting hotter and hotter. I've almost visited all of Shangjing. I'm worried about how to spend tomorrow. Hearing Jiang Pengji's complaints, a glint flashed across Feng Ju's eyes, which immediately turned into helplessness. If it were anyone else, they would have long lost their patience. However, Jiang Pengji still ate and drank as she should. She could hold her liquor very well. He did not know what his second brother thought of her. He actually felt that she was better than Bogeo. In terms of eating, drinking, and having fun, Bogeo was indeed inferior to Lu Shi. Compared to Feng Ju's probing from time to time, Huang Song played the role of a fair-weather friend vividly. The three of them gathered together to eat, drink, and have fun. They did not talk about business, but only talked about romance. It's okay. We'll go somewhere else tomorrow. Brother Lu, don't worry. I know a lot of good places to go. Huang Song winked at her, looking like an adult who had a tacit understanding. After they got closer, he originally wanted to call Jiang Pengji Brother Shi, but she disliked the way he addressed her. She made him change it. Jiang Pengji held a peanut in her mouth and joked, "If you say this to Huayu, I'll be happy the whole day tomorrow even if I don't go out." After hearing that, Huang Song suddenly looked distressed. "Brother Lu, you can't be like this. I'm doing this for your own good. It's fine if you don't repay my kindness, but why do you have to trick me?" If a brother Khan knew that he brought Feng Ju to indecent places all day long, wouldn't he slap him? Didn't the old masters say that food and lust are human nature? This is the pursuit of life. Food with the left hand and lust with the right. Even saints can't avoid this custom, let alone ordinary people. Besides, Huaijie is not a 3-year-old child. He only went there for a while and didn't do anything. Second brother Feng is too strict, Huang Song muttered quickly, as if he wanted to use this to calm the guilt in his heart. Feng Ju mocked Huang Song for being semi-illiterate. There was nothing wrong with this evaluation. He did instigate Feng Ju to look for an artist, but she had a strict upbringing. It was okay for her to sit and drink and watch the dance, but she refused to do anything that overstepped her boundaries. You can explain your fallacious reasoning in front of Huayu. Jiang Pengji sneered. Feng Jin's control over his younger brother was very restrained, but he was secretly flirtatious. Huang Song was getting bolder and bolder. If it weren't for the fact that Wei Jingxian was about to give birth, which had almost squeezed out Feng Jin's mind and left him with no time to care about other things, he might have long discovered that Feng Ju had been abducted by Huang Song to run around and fool around. "Brother Lu, your words hurt my heart." Huang Song's face scrunched up into a ball. It was obvious that he was putting on a show. This person's ability to liven up the atmosphere was not weak. In order to achieve his goals, he did not care about his personal image. When he was playing around, he was very open. Even if all the nobles in Shangjing spoke harshly to him, most of his peers of the same class followed his lead. Jiang Pingji only found out about this after she got to know Huang Song up close. He was very popular. "Where does it hurt?" Jiang Pingji asked with a smile. Huang Song pretended to sigh. "Everywhere. It hurts. My heart is bleeding." Jiang Pingji held back her laughter and teased, "Speaking of glib tongues, among the people I know, you're definitely one of the best." After peeling the peanuts, she looked at the sky outside. The sun was gradually setting, and the orange sky was filled with a different kind of beauty. In the words of the audience in the livestream room, it was dusk, the time to meet the devil. After paying, they each got on their horses. Huang Song said, "Brother Ju, Brother Lu, I'll send you to second Brother Feng's residence first." "Okay, then I'll have to trouble you." The medical officer and the midwife both said that Wei Jingxian was about to give birth in the next 2 days. After hearing the news, Jiang Pingji planned to go and take a look. Feng Jin and his wife were also hostages who were under house arrest. Their personal freedom was not restricted, but pregnant women were sensitive and thoughtful. They lacked experienced elders to take care of them. It was their first child, so the young couple always felt uneasy. On the way, Jiang Pingji looked at the street and frowned slightly. Something was not right. Seeing the situation, Huang Song asked with concern, "Brother Lu, are you not feeling well?" "No, I just feel that the streets have become much more deserted these 2 days. The stray cats and dogs that are usually seen have disappeared," Huang Song said. "Yes, after being reminded by you, I also feel strange. I suddenly remembered something. 2 days ago, the wolf dog at home was in a strange mood. It scratched the wall all night and howled non-stop in the middle of the night. The old man wanted to kill that beast." Jiang Pingji was startled. "Is that true?" She did not keep any animals with her, so she did not pay much attention to it. "Sigh, how can it be fake? When I go back tonight, I might see that beast stewed in a pot." Huang Song quite liked the wolf dog, but unfortunately, the old man was the master of the house. There was nothing he could do about it no matter how much he liked it. Jiang Pingji smiled and said, "That's good. There's an extra meal tonight." Huang Song said with a pained heart, "Brother, your words hurt." Feng Ju looked at the two of them chatting and was suddenly speechless. He felt that he was leading 2 naughty children. Jiang Pingji's heart was somewhat stifled. She vaguely had an ominous feeling. Her mental strength was very strong. In wuxia terms, the intuition of a martial artist was also stronger than that of an ordinary person. In layman's terms, her intuition was 100 times stronger than that of a beast. "Recently, have you seen any strange things when you patrol the streets?" Huang Song was startled and asked, "What kind of things?" "The stray cats and dogs on the streets, the snakes, insects, rats, ants, and cockroaches in the corners. Are there any abnormal behaviors?" Where Jiang Pingji lived, she could not even see snakes, insects, rats, ants, or cockroaches, let alone stray cats and dogs. As the patrol officer of Shangjing, even if Huang Song was only the head of the urban management, he often wandered outside. He must have seen more than her. Feng Ju smelled something unusual and frowned. Huang Song thought carefully and said, "There are. Anyway, I've seen fewer and fewer stray cats and dogs recently. This is normal. Anyway, many people will secretly catch them to eat with wine. It's a hot season now. It's normal that cats and dogs do not like to come out." Huang Song's explanation seemed very reasonable, but Jiang Pingji's heart beat wildly. A dark cloud lingered in her heart that could not be dispelled. "What's wrong, Brother Lu?" Huang Song asked. "Nothing. It's probably because the summer heat has been severe recently. I'm always feeling stuffy. I feel that something bad will happen." What bad thing? The weather has been dry recently. It hasn't rained for a month. As the patrol officer of Shangjing, you have to be careful lest something catches fire. Most of the buildings nowadays were made of wood. If they caught fire, it would be difficult to put them out. Jiang Pengji warned, it's not impossible. Huang Song did not know whether to laugh or cry. Brother Liu, you should be more considerate of me. If it really catches fire, you'll lose your lowly position as the patrol officer of Shangjing. If you don't want to lose your position, you'll have to put in more effort. Huang Song heard what she said and felt that it made sense. Even if Jiang Pengji's words were not pleasant to hear, she had good intentions. The current Huang Song wholeheartedly served the people. He came from a humble background, but he had the heart to help the world and save the people. He was usually sloppy, but when he was enforcing the law, he was upright and outspoken. He could be said to love the people as if they were his own children. It had to be said that it was not without reason that Feng Ju saw him in a different light. Chapter 369. The three of them arrived at Feng Jin's residence. Jiang Pengji saw Feng Jin, whom she had not seen for a few days. She was shocked by his dark eyes. Huaiyu, how many days have you not slept? 3 or 4 days. Feng Jin smelled alcohol and cosmetics on them. He was too tired to pursue the matter. Jiang Pengji complained, 3 or 4 days without sleep. Are you preparing to become a celestial being? Jiang Pengji learned about the joke from the audience in the streaming room. Feng Jin rubbed his brows to wake himself up. He did not have the energy to pursue the matter. Jingxian's stomach has been hurting for the past few days. She went to the delivery room a few times, but she came out again. It was getting more and more troublesome each time. He was so worried that he could not sleep. The child was purposely tormenting his inexperienced parents. Feng Jin had been tormented by his wife since she was pregnant. He could understand the difficulties of being a parent more and more. According to the customs of the ancient times, the father only needed to sow the seeds, wait for 10 months, and take over the child from the midwife. When Feng Jin and his wife were under house arrest, Jingxian was discovered to be pregnant. Many things could only be solved by the husband and wife. The more he was involved, the more he felt a sense of security as a father. What about now? Feng Jin said, the midwife made some ginseng chicken soup. She's drinking it now. I asked Takshu to send some good old ginseng. I heard it's good for pregnant women. Feng Jin nodded. He had seen the old ginseng. Its age and medicinal properties were excellent. It was prepared for labor. Perhaps because he had not slept for a few days, his brain was a little slow. He only reacted after a while. Lanting, why are you here today? After Takshu sent the old ginseng, she went back and told me that Jingxian is going to give birth in 2 days. I was worried that you were short of hands, so I volunteered to make up the numbers. Jiang Pengji often visited Feng Jin's house during her stay in Shangjing. She was familiar with his servant. She asked the servant to make a pot of refreshing hot tea as soon as she entered the house. Drink some tea to wake up your mind. Don't fall asleep. Feng Jin thanked her tiredly. Thank you. He had been tense for the past few days, afraid that while he was dozing off, the other side would make a move. He was so nervous that he didn't dare to sleep for even a moment. With Jiang Pengji's arrival, he felt much more at ease and gradually felt sleepy. You and I are best friends. There's no need to thank me. Not long after, a series of painful cries came from inside the room. The maidservants and the midwife were running around in circles, and then there was no more sound. It was another false alarm. Feng Ju also waited for 4 hours. The moon was high in the sky, but there was still no movement in the delivery room. As the father, Feng Jin was tormented. Wei Jingxian, who was pregnant and giving birth, was also exhausted. She was sweating profusely and her face was pale. The maidservant kept wiping her sweat with a damp cloth. The midwife checked and said that it was not the right time yet. She could rest for a while. Usually, it would take 6 to 10 hours for a pregnant woman's first child to be born smoothly. If it was a little more difficult, it might even take 3 to 5 days. 3 to 5 days? Feng Jin almost fainted when he heard the time. The midwife looked at him strangely. She had delivered countless children, but she had never seen a man as nervous as him. When it was midnight, Jiang Pingji asked Feng Jin to take a nap first. With her and Feng Ju watching over the place, there would be no problems. When Feng Ju heard this, he looked at her with a strange expression. If he did not investigate wrongly, the person in front of him seemed to be his second sister-in-law's ex-fiancé. How could his second brother be at ease? However, Feng Jin's reaction made his eyeballs almost pop out of their sockets. Kate Lanting is here. Jin can rest assured. If it starts, wake me up. Feng Jin was already so sleepy that he couldn't stand it anymore. His mind was a little groggy. He asked the servant to bring a set of bedding and directly rolled it over his body. He leaned against the pillar and took a nap. Not long after, he fell into a deep sleep. Feng Ju was speechless. Not long after, Wei Jingxian's cries of pain came from the delivery room. In order to save energy, she gritted her teeth. Her voice sounded very muffled. Women in ancient times giving birth. It's really scary. Jiang Pingji had sharp ears and eyes. She heard the movements very clearly. Her heart could not help but tremble. The methods of reproduction in ancient times were so backward that it made her hair stand on end. They could even be sentenced in the Federation. She spoke softly, so Feng Ju did not hear her clearly. He only heard her lament that giving birth was not easy. Don't all women have to go through this? He said matter-of-factly. Jiang Pingji glared at him. There was a look of disdain in her eyes that made him scratch his head in confusion. She secretly poked the system and said in her heart, I guess I'll have to stay up late tonight. If I'm bored, I'll start a live stream. The system did not reply. It just silently started the live stream. It was estimated that it was also night time at the other end of the live stream. After a full 10 seconds, the number of people in the live stream room reached the upper limit of 150,000. Host V, it's boring at night. Let's chat to kill time. It was midnight. At the other end of the live stream room, it was only 12 o'clock at night. Nightlife had just begun. The people in ancient times did not have so much entertainment. The lighting equipment was only outdated oil lamps. To save money, they had long gone back to bed and fell into a sweet dream. At the same time, a short and frightened cry broke the silence of the night. Not long after, a spark lit up and lit the wick in the lantern. The rustling of clothes and the sound of steady footsteps came from afar. The light in the lantern was getting closer and closer. Zixiao, what happened? Outside the house, a young man wearing a single garment and a cloak asked with concern. After a few breaths, there was a faint movement in the room. When the candle was lit, the closed door was opened, revealing a delicate and perfect face that was pale and frightened. I'm fine. There was a thin layer of sweat on Wei Si's forehead. He was panting as he spoke. I was just frightened by the nightmare. The young man slept in the room next to Wei Xia. Nightmare? The young man asked curiously, what did you dream of? He was really curious. What kind of dream could scare Wei Xia like this? It was as if he had lost his soul. Wei Xia pursed his lips. After a long time, he said in a hoarse voice, I dreamed that there was an earthquake in a place. The city collapsed and the houses were all in ruins. The people lost their lives in their sleep. There were cries of orphaned children everywhere. I can't bear to recall the tragedy in the world. This was not all about the nightmare. He also dreamed that the person he missed was buried in the ruins and was badly mutilated. He could not remember where the scene in the dream was, but the bloody color kept lingering in front of him, making it hard for him to breathe. An earthquake? The young man's expression tightened. He comforted him, it's just a dream. Don't take it seriously. Wei Si's lips were pale and he was still in shock. Seeing this, the young man asked the boy servant to start a fire and boil tea for Wei Si to calm down. The boy servant had just started a fire and placed the teapot on the stove. He was horrified to find that the teapot lid was shaking slightly, causing the tea to spill out. Chapter 370. Such a scene scared the boy attendant so much that his face turned pale. He hurriedly shouted, "Mister? Mister, there's a monster!" The boy attendant noticed the unusual movement. The young man and Wei Ci naturally noticed it too. The two of them hurriedly ran to an open space. The tremor lasted for the time it took to burn half an incense stick. "Is this an earthquake?" The young man tightened his cloak. Even though the night was still stuffy, he felt a chill all over his body. Wei Ci's face was drained of blood and was pale. It was as if something in his mind had cracked open, causing his thoughts to be empty. When did an earthquake happen in Dongqing? At this time in his previous life, he was already in Zhongzhao's Bianzhou. The Wei family of Hejian was weak and could only rely on the Wei family of Bianzhou. He did not want to participate in the struggle of the clan. For the next few years, he lived in seclusion and occasionally paid attention to the affairs of the outside world. When the world was in chaos and he was appreciated by the old master, he came out to help. At that time, the world was already divided. The 9 states and 5 countries no longer existed. The feudal lords were divided and the power struggle for hegemony was already in full swing. As for Dongqing, he had a thorough understanding of it. He searched his memory but could not remember any earthquake at this time. The earthquake originated from the side of the Emperor's star. He raised his head and glanced at the celestial body. The treacherous celestial body exuded a gloomy coldness, as though it was covered with a faint layer of blood. It gave him a sense of meaning. He pinched his fingers and calculated for a long time before he vaguely calculated that the source of the earthquake was near the Emperor's star. The Ziwei star in Dongqing referred to the Emperor of Dongqing. The side of Ziwei's star naturally referred to Shangjing. His current location was very far from Shangjing. It would take 2 months if he rode at full speed. He could feel such an obvious tremor from so far away. It was hard for him to imagine what would happen in Shangjing, which was the epicenter of the earthquake. If he knew that there would be an earthquake in Shangjing, how could he watch that person go to Shangjing? He had to stop it no matter what. Could it be that even the heavens couldn't bear to see him live a second life and couldn't tolerate him? "Zixiao, what's wrong with you? Who would dare to go back to the house to sleep during an earthquake?" The young man and the boy attendant hurriedly went inside to move some bedding. They planned to sleep in the open space in the courtyard for the night. Everything would be discussed tomorrow. Suddenly, he realized that his friend seemed to have lost his soul. "Xiang, I'm fine." "I just thought of the nightmare just now. That might be a warning from the heavens. He had just had a nightmare, and when he woke up, there really was an earthquake. Wasn't this a warning from the heavens?" The young man looked worried. "Dongqing today? How can it withstand such torment?" The officials neglected the affairs of the court, and the court was filled with the lackeys of their relatives and eunuchs. Who knew how many people were buried in this earthquake? How many people will survive? Wei Ci's gaze was distant. It was unknown if he had heard his friend's murmur. 2 flowers blossomed, 1 on each side. Jiang Pingji's alertness was far sharper than that of a beast. Half a minute before the earthquake, her nerves were already stretched to the limit. She had never felt so flustered before. Her heart was beating abnormally fast. "Stop sleeping." She slapped Fengju's back and woke up the naughty child who was secretly taking a nap. "I'm very flustered." Fengju looked at Jiang Pingji in confusion. What did it have to do with him that she was panicking? "Do you want me to rub it for you?" Fengju maintained a cold expression. The audience in the streaming room burst into laughter at his godly reply. The bullet screen was full of comments from people who felt sorry for the naughty child. He was courting death with such depth. "Get lost. Who asked you to rub it?" Jiang Pingji said rudely. Her rude attitude made Fengju's impression of her even worse. "I think something is going to happen. Go and wake Huayu up. Go to an empty place in the courtyard and wait. I'll go to the delivery room to take a look." Fengju's temper rose after being treated so rudely by her. However, Jiang Pingji's actions were agile and swift. She had already gotten up and went to the delivery room. At this moment, the midwife suddenly opened the door of the delivery room and said, "Madam is moving." "What? At this time?" Jiang Pingji was stunned. A strong sense of crisis rushed from the soles of her feet to her brain. She raised her hand and waved the midwife away. She pushed her to the corridor and quickly rushed into the delivery room. The midwife was shocked by her sudden action. She cried out and fell to the ground on her buttocks. There seemed to be a cracking sound at her waist. She had twisted it. In the next moment, the ground shook violently, as if the sky and earth were turning upside down. The earth quaked and the mountains cracked. The loud sound of the house collapsing exploded in everyone's ears. Dust filled the air. The terrified screams were drowned out. Everything happened too suddenly. The audience in the streaming room was completely dumbfounded. When they came to their senses, the streaming screen was already in a mess. The eaves suddenly collapsed and fell on the maidservant in the delivery room. Blood and flesh splattered all over the ground. Jiang Pingji's physical potential exploded in an instant. Before the eaves were about to hit Wei Jingxian, Jiang Pingji hugged Wei Jingxian along with the thin blanket. She rolled over and narrowly avoided being hit. The candles in the room had long been extinguished, and the surroundings were pitch black. Jiang Pingji relied on her intuition and memory. She carried Wei Jingxian, who was covered in blood, and rushed out of the delivery room. The moonlight poured down, and there was light in their vision. The ground was still shaking. Jiang Pingji placed Wei Jingxian on the empty ground and handed her over to the midwife, who was scared out of her wits. "I'll go in to save her. You help Jingxian deliver the baby first." "Feng Huaijie, what the hell are you doing? Hurry up and come over to help." Fortunately, Feng Jin did not like complicated and gorgeous decorations. There was only a small pond in the courtyard. There were no artificial mountains or mountains. The servants who were lucky enough to escape gathered in the open space. Feng Ju was awakened by Jiang Pingji's scolding. He hurriedly came forward to calm everyone down. Feng Jin was extremely tired and fell into a deep sleep. However, he was lucky. The fallen beam did not hit him. It only grazed him slightly and woke him up from his sleep. At that moment, the entire Shangjing city had been turned upside down. Feng Ju covered his injured arm. His face was pale as he comforted everyone. "Husband, it hurts." When the earthquake happened, Wei Jingxian had already fainted. The last image in her memory was the beam that fell on her head and the familiar outline. The midwife's psychological quality was good enough. Under Jiang Pingji's tough orders, she helped Wei Jingxian deliver the baby. She pressed on her philtrum forcefully and forced her to wake up. If the pregnant woman did not stay awake at that time, she would die with the baby. "Madam, Jingxian." After Feng Jin woke up, his mind was in a mess. His heart seemed to have entered an ice cellar. It was so cold that his whole body was stiff. He heard a familiar call in his ear. He barely regained his consciousness and hugged Wei Jingxian, who was covered in blood, tightly. "Some stomach hurts?" Wei Jingxian felt a sharp pain in her stomach. It was as if something hot and wet had burst. It stained the clothes and bedding under her. Waves of intense pain passed through her brain. "I'm going to give birth." In another place, Jiang Pingji rescued 2 injured servants and placed them in an open space. The entire mansion had been turned into ruins. There would be waves of aftershocks. She could only try her best. Fortunately, the houses in ancient times were low. Even if there were aftershocks, she did not have to worry about being buried in the ruins. She dug out some bedding and bedsheets from the ruins and threw them to Feng Ju. "Surround it and make a temporary delivery room. Get someone to search the stove and boil hot water as soon as possible." Chapter 371. At that moment, the live stream room was in an uproar. The usual bickering and ridicule were nowhere to be seen. Before a disaster, people's compassion would always overcome all negative emotions. "Shinshou Yang Tua, streamer. You're injured too. Hurry up and stop the bleeding." "Zai I Chili Diao. Earthquake, it's actually an earthquake. I felt the entire screen shaking violently just now. I hope the streamer is safe and sound. I hope no one dies in that world. I feel my hands trembling even when I type. However, how could there be no deaths in such a large-scale earthquake? Even in their world, when the Luchuan earthquake happened in China, there were extremely heavy casualties. Not to mention in ancient times where rescue measures were extremely backward. In such an era, it was not the end after the earthquake. There were subsequent disaster relief, medical treatment, and disposal of corpses. If 20% of people died in the earthquake, those who could not be rescued in time and were seriously injured would account for at least 30%. That was not all. Wounds would be infected, medicine would be lacking, food would be lacking, and if the corpses were not properly disposed of, it could even cause a plague. Jiang Pingji had no time to care about that. She raised her hand and wiped her face, then washed her hands with the water from the pond in the courtyard. Let's help Xianxia deliver the baby first. If the others are not seriously injured, let's move out the living items from the ruins. There will be a few more aftershocks later. Be careful. Jiang Pingji chopped the broken beam with her bare hands and inserted it deeply into the ground. Then, she spread the bedsheets and bedding to make an area. She made the remaining items into firewood and started a fire. Her calm appearance made the people around her feel more at ease. Because of Jiang Pingji's protection, Xianxia was not injured. However, as a pregnant woman about to give birth, she was frightened and her situation was very critical. The doctor who was originally invited to keep watch was hit in the head by the falling beam and died on the spot. The midwife only knew how to deliver a baby and did not know how to treat a patient. She had just twisted her waist. Huayu, stay here with Xianxia. She will feel more at ease. Huaijia, bring the servants to search the surroundings to see if there are any living people. Jiang Pingji multitasked and typed a string of words in the livestream room at the same time. Host V, is there anyone who is an obstetrician and gynecologist? It's fine if you have experience in delivering a baby or can provide theoretical guidance. Jiang Pingji was a human from the future. Naturally, she had no experience in delivering a baby. Even the doctors of her era did not have it. That was because the baby was not conceived in a woman's womb. Fortunately, the people in the live broadcast room could provide a certain amount of help, so that she would not be blind. His luck was pretty good. There were really experienced obstetricians and midwives among the 150,000 spectators. Jiang Pingji ordered people to light a fire and barely tidy up a clean area. Can the child be delivered naturally? The midwife endured the pain in her waist and glanced at Jiang Pingji. She was touching the pregnant woman's belly and identifying the fetal position according to the guidance of the audience in the streaming room. Then, she looked at the husband of the pregnant woman, Feng Jin, in a difficult position. It's fine if the husband doesn't mind the bloody scene in the delivery room, but why did he let an outsider in? Feng Jin was comforting Wei Jingxian when he noticed the midwife's strange gaze. He pursed his lips and remained expressionless. In the eyes of outsiders, Jiang Pingji was still a man. Lanting has learned some Qi Huang techniques. It might come in handy. Don't worry. As soon as he finished speaking, Wei Jingxian felt a sharp pain in her stomach. She could only endure the pain and clench Feng Jin's hand so tightly that her nails dug into his flesh. Soon, blood started to flow. Jiang Pingji's cold voice came into her ears. The cervix is only 3 fingers deep. This is only the first stage of labor? Jingxian, don't exert force. Huayu, give her a handkerchief to bite on so that she won't bite her tongue when the contractions are too painful. Before the midwife could reply, Jiang Pingji tried to identify for a while and hesitated. The fetal position. At that moment, the obstetrician in the streaming room was giving guidance at the last minute. The other spectators were also anxious, but they knew what was important and what was not. At that moment, other than the retired doctor and midwife, no one else dared to post a bullet screen. The fetal position should be in front of the pillow. As a genetic warrior, Jiang Pingji was very familiar with the structure of living things. Even if it was through the text guidance in the streaming room, she could quickly get the hang of it. Her prediction of the fetal position was not wrong. According to the audience, the fetal position in front of the pillow was usually a natural birth. She could not help but secretly let out a sigh of relief. If the fetal position was not right at that moment, it would really be 1 corpse and 2 lives. Looking at Jiang Pingji's very professional manner, the midwife was a little confused. Her job had been taken away by someone who seemed to be even more professional than her. What was she doing here? Feng Jin said, see if the hot water outside is ready. Clean Jingxian's body first. The bloodstains scared him out of his wits. Fortunately, it was not Wei Jingxian's. Otherwise, what would he do tonight? Cut some of the ginseng that was found in the storeroom. When the cervix is opened to the 10th finger, it will be able to give birth. When that time comes, you will need strength. Jiang Pingji wrung the cloth dry and wiped the sweat and stains on Wei Jingxian's face. Although it was summer, the temperature was still very cold for a pregnant woman. There was even a fire in the area that was surrounded. Get someone to wash the cloth with hot water. Cut a few pieces and put them on the fire to dry. There are ruins everywhere. The swaddling clothes that were prepared previously can't be used anymore. Jiang Pingji paid attention to the fetal position and the text guidance of the audience in the streaming room. Before the cervix was opened to the 10th finger, there were a few strong aftershocks in Shangjing. Fortunately, Feng Jin had been watching over her. Wei Jingxian's emotions were considered stable. This child was born at the wrong time. Feng Jin's eyes were red and bloodshot. He was usually neat and tidy, but now he was in a sorry state. Suddenly, his meticulous hairpin was crooked and the clean stubble at the corner of his mouth appeared. Hearing that, Jiang Pingji scolded him sternly, Feng Jin, Feng Huayu, what do you mean by that? Wei Jingxian was in so much pain that her consciousness was blurred. When she vaguely heard those words, she felt sorrow in her heart. The people in ancient times were ignorant and superstitious. Jiang Pingji was really worried that Feng Jin would be out of his mind and put an ominous label on the child. Your husband is not blaming the child. Don't worry. He first comforted Wei Jingxian, who had tears in her eyes, and then immediately said, the child was born weak. He needs careful care to grow up healthily. Now that the earthquake is not stopping, I don't know what will happen tomorrow. He was not blaming the child for being born ominous. He was just worried that the child born under such circumstances would not survive. Everything will be discussed after the child is born. Jiang Pingji said coldly, a man should be indomitable. Can't you even protect your wife and child? Jingxian is going to give birth now. Can't you say something festive and humorous? How unlucky. Feng Jin responded with silence. There was another wave of intense pain and contraction. Wei Jingxian could not help but cry out, little angel Mengmeng, streamer, that's enough. At that moment, a corner of the rising sun had risen in the sky. The golden morning sun shone on the earth, dispelling the long night. Jingxian, you can use force. Follow my instructions. Finally, there was a result after a long wait. Chapter 372. Little Angel Mengmeng. Miss Jingxian's physical condition is very good. With proper postpartum care, she should be able to recover quickly. I'm not sure about the child's condition. However, the child was born tenaciously in this world. I think the heavens will bless this little life. After the retired obstetrician and gynecologist said this, the silence in the live broadcast room seemed to have been lifted, and the number of comments slowly increased. Shinshou Yang Tua, I was sweating the whole night and didn't dare to leave the screen. I never knew that giving birth was so painful for a woman. Just now, I called my mother while trembling. I was wrong, I shouldn't have scolded her over such a small matter. Love spicy sticks? I won't hate the streamer anymore. You're really someone who can go to heaven. Melancholy, I've been thinking for a long time after watching the live stream for the whole night. Wei Jingxian was a brave girl. I saw the greatness and tenacity of a woman in her. I thought of my girlfriend, who was the same age as her. Not long ago, we had forgotten to use birth control, and she had gotten pregnant. At first, I thought that we were still young, and there was no rush to have a child. I planned to abort it tomorrow, but now, I want to repent to her, Tingyang Kuaixin. The birth of a new life is indeed touching and delightful, but I'm more concerned about whether I can tip the streamer so that she can buy disaster relief items. In the face of disaster, unity is strength. Saving one life counts, even if it's a dimension away. This bullet screen was quickly liked and pinned to the top. Of course, Jiang Pingji saw it too. She cleaned up the baby and wrapped him in swaddling clothes to prevent him from catching a cold. She bit her lip. Host V, I'll try my best. After this bullet screen was sent out, the rewards received by the system increased explosively. The previous rewards were all for praying for children or celebrating the birth of a child. The later rewards were all for praying for disaster victims. Of course, there were also viewers who mocked Jiang Pingji for trying to make a fortune out of the disaster. As soon as this bullet screen was posted, it was immediately rebutted. Inyang Kuaixin, are you F***king retarded? I've been following this live broadcast room for several years, and I've never heard the host take the initiative to ask for tips or other things. Do you think everyone is as heartless as you? If she's such a person, I'll livestream myself eating my keyboard. De Zhuangzhu's wife, idiot, I've made the call. Pick it up. Potato beef Gafen, hee hee, you must have watched too many of those coquettish bitches live broadcasts. Do you think everyone is greedy for money? There was a huge earthquake and so many people died. How could you say such inhumane words? Doesn't your conscience hurt? Jiang Pingji was initially disgusted, but after seeing so many words of support for her, the discomfort in her heart vanished. Just for this, it was worth it for her to shed all pretense of cordiality with the system. Feng Jin and Wei Jingxian's first child was a little girl. Her face was wrinkled and red. She looked like a monkey that had lost its fur. But at that moment, Jiang Pingji felt that this child had a beauty that could cause the downfall of a city. She handed the child to the Feng couple, who were anxiously waiting for her. Give her a hug. She's a beautiful daughter. Thank you. Feng Jin's face was pale. When the child was just born, he felt so nervous that he almost suffocated. Now that he was holding this life that was so soft that it seemed to have no bones, his chest was unprecedentedly soft. Lanting, give this child a name. At that moment, Wei Jingxian felt a little better and regained some strength. She looked at her husband and then at Jiang Pingji. How could she not know? Lanting, help me give her a name. Wei Jingxian revealed a pale smile. She was covered with a blanket and there was a fire next to her, which helped to dispel the chill in her body. She knew that if Jiang Pingji had not rushed in and carried her to the delivery room, they would have been sent to hell by the falling beam. Now that she could safely give birth to the child, it was all because of the person in front of her. She was not afraid of losing her life, but when she thought about the possibility of the child being born because of this, she felt a piercing pain in her heart. Jiang Pingji heard the couple's request and was stunned. Give her a name? In this era, when a newborn was born in every family, the father had to wait at the door for the first passerby to give his child a lowly name. Ordinary people had the saying that lowly names were easier to support, but that was the habit of ordinary people. The aristocrats scoffed at it. Since Feng Jin and his wife had spoken, Jiang Pingji thought for a while and said, Huayu's family is not suitable to give their child a lowly name, so I'll give her a masculine name. She'll be called Changxing. I hope that she will live a happy life and live a long and happy life. Changxing? Okay, that's the name. Feng Jin finally smiled. The child seemed to feel it. She licked her lips and rubbed her head against his chest. While they were talking, the sky was completely bright. The servants who were alive quietly cleaned up the ruins. They were lucky enough to survive, but most of them were buried in the ruins and could not see the light of day. Jiang Pingji lifted the curtain and walked out of the simple delivery room. The midwife, who had sprained her waist badly, was sitting by the side and instructing the maidservants to make chicken soup. There were many ingredients that were beneficial to the recovery of the pregnant woman after giving birth. When the midwife saw her, she quickly asked the maidservants to bring a copper basin. There was a cloth towel beside the copper basin, and it was filled with warm water. Lang Jun, do you want to wash your face? I asked the maidservants in the manner to find the old master's clothes. He hasn't worn them yet. You can change into them and wash the wound on your back. If it's left for too long and the weather is hot, it will fester easily. The midwife looked at Jiang Pingji carefully. She felt that she had discovered a terrifying secret. It was too dark last night and the earthquake happened too quickly. She did not notice the details. Now that it was bright, she stayed by the side and thought about it carefully. She felt that the young Lang Jun was a little strange. After all, she was a professional midwife. She had a pair of experienced and sharp eyes. She could notice some abnormalities in Jiang Pingji's body. When Jiang Pingji came out of the delivery room, she suddenly had an epiphany and woke up. What if the Lang Jun was a woman? No wonder the old master of the Feng family did not mind Lu Langjun helping his wife deliver the baby. Jiang Pingji saw the midwife's expression and suddenly understood something. She wet a cloth towel and wiped her face, washing away the tiredness from a sleepless night. "I'm fine. I just need to wear a cloak to cover my wound." Jiang Pingji agreed. Seeing the midwife's awkward movements, she said apologetically, "It was an emergency yesterday. I pushed you away and caused you to sprain your waist? Please forgive me, old lady." The midwife said generously, "A waist injury is nothing. You saved my life. I haven't thanked you for saving my life." Jiang Pingji relaxed. Only then did she realize that there was a wave of pain coming from her back. She twitched her mouth. The wound must have been caused when she saved Wei Jingxian the night before. Fortunately, this body of hers was already unbelievably strong. If it was Lu Shi's original body, the beam that fell on him last night would have caused internal bleeding. If it was more serious, the wound on his back might have exposed his white spine. Now, it was just a small wound, which was only a small one to her. Chapter 373. Most of the houses had collapsed in the first earthquake, and the rest had been killed in the aftershocks. Wei Jingxian needed post-delivery care, and she could not continue to lie in the temporary delivery room. That was a special situation, and naturally, she had to be more meticulous. At such a time, tents were far safer than houses. Jiang Pingji said goodbye to Feng Jin. "I have to go back. I don't know how my family is doing after last night's situation. The house and money are secondary. I'm just worried about Xiaoyu." Fortunately, the Lu's property in Shangjing was not big. It was small and the house was low. It was mainly made of wood and there was not much rubble. Even if the house collapsed, it would not kill anyone. "I have to go back and take charge." Feng Jin knew what Su Ke meant to Jiang Pingji. They were master and servant, but they were actually good friends. "I'll ask the servants to send you back. After the earthquake, there will be many mobs. It's better to be careful," Feng Jin said. Jiang Pingji was about to nod when she suddenly heard a familiar sound. She suddenly stood up and looked in the direction of the sound. Huff! Su Ke was panting. He saw the low-key and luxurious Feng Jin's house turned into ruins. His heart sank. White carried him through the ruins. He saw a familiar figure from afar, and his worry turned into ecstasy. "Lang Jun." Su Ke jumped off the horse. He was so happy that he looked like he was about to cry. His face was covered in dust. His clothes were twisted like dried vegetables. His sleeves were torn, and his hair looked like it had been bitten by a dog. He looked very pathetic. "Xiaoyu? Fortunately, you're still alive. How's the situation? Are there many casualties?" Jiang Pingji saw that he was alive and only had a slight scratch on his arm. She was relieved. Su Ke was not as fast as White. He was still stumbling toward Jiang Pingji, but White was already rubbing her cheek. He took a deep breath and reported, with White's warning, only the stableman was injured. Everyone else is fine. Jiang Pingji was confused. Only the stableman was injured? Su Ke looked at White, not knowing whether to laugh or cry. Lang Jun, Mr. White saved a lot of people. Yesterday, before midnight, it suddenly jumped up and kicked over the stable. It accidentally injured the stableman who tried to stop it, then it ran into the house and ran around. After all, it was a brave and skillful warhorse from the northern borderline, and it had a master like Jiang Pingji. How could an ordinary person tame it? Almost everyone was unable to sleep because of Whitey, but it was very intelligent. Whoever came near the house would have their heads gnawed off. The group of people did not dare to hurt Whitey. It was Jiang Pingji's beloved horse. The lives of all the servants were not as important as Whitey. Under Dabai's stubborn and willful obstruction, Su Ku and all the servants could only stay in the courtyard and confront Dabai. Then the earthquake happened. When Jiang Pingji heard this, her expression became extremely strange. "Your hair is so messy. Did Dabai gnaw on it?" She had thought that Su Ku had messed it up in the midst of the chaos, making it look like a dog had gnawed on it. So it was Dabai who had gnawed it? Su Ku was speechless. "Lang Jun, it's too hurtful to say such things at this time." "Well done." Jiang Pingji stroked White Yi's mane. The proud and beautiful little girl stuck out her tongue and licked her face, as if she was asking for credit. Seeing this, the gloominess in Su Ku's heart disappeared. If it was gnawed on, then so be it. It was better than dying. "Last night, the earthquake happened suddenly. I ordered the servants to clean up the rubble and search for the people who were still alive. That's why I came late. Please forgive me, Lang Jun." Jiang Pingji smiled and said generously, "You did the right thing. Why should I blame you? When the earthquake first happened, the probability of survival was high. When the aftershocks were over, it would be too late. You know your Longjuan's ability. If I can't survive, the whole of Shangjing will be a dead city. You came all the way here. What's the situation outside?" If she had really failed and died in the earthquake, what was the use of Su Ku rushing over? If he had done that, it would have been a really responsible act. In this era, the higher-ups would bear grudges and think that Su Ku was rebellious. But with Jiang Pingji's magnanimity, how could she blame him? Su Ku was not an emotional person. However, after experiencing the disaster and facing the strong pressure to survive, he made a choice. Now that he received Jiang Pingji's courtesy, he could not help but tear up. He sniffled and held back his tears. Outside, it's all ruins. 9 out of 10 rooms have collapsed. The people are dead or injured. I'm afraid there are very few survivors. Su Ku choked. The tragic scene along the way appeared in front of his eyes. His heart was filled with sorrow. In ancient times, the people worked and rested from 9 in the morning to 5 in the evening. The earthquake happened after midnight. At that time, most of the people were already asleep. The earthquake happened so suddenly and the tremors were so strong. How could they escape in time? 9 out of 10 rooms have collapsed. Jiang Pingji let out a long sigh. She sat down on the ruins as if she had lost all her strength. She was a genetic warrior who had participated in the most tragic interstellar war. She had reaped the lives of countless enemies with her hands. Life and death were common to her. In Jiang Pingji's eyes, the ordinary people were no different from the federal citizens she protected. The enemy's life was worthless in her eyes, but the citizens she protected were as precious as treasures. Now, this earthquake had taken the lives of countless commoners. Their deaths were worthless. Their lives were as cheap as grass. Lang Jun, Su Ku wanted to persuade him, but he did not know how. He knew that his Lang Jun was usually cold, stubborn, and unrestrained, but he knew that he was kind. Because of his kindness, Lang Jun would personally go to the fields to learn how to farm from the old farmers. He would understand the customs of the fields and crops. He would draw and improve the farming tools. He would not hesitate to spend money to ask the craftsmen to further improve according to the drawings. He did not think that other aristocratic families would lower themselves to do that. Apart from that, there was also a troop to suppress bandits and protect the peace of Hejian County. There was a female troop to take in abandoned and trafficked girls. There were boxes and boxes of books under the ruins. These were the precious treasures she had exchanged with Cheng Cheng. She was preparing to promote movable type printing in the future and give them to all the students in the world. The 3-character classic, the 100 family names. Those were all prepared for young children in the future. There was also Bai Tan in Chongzhou. She had secretly built a papermaking workshop. She had experimented with many papermaking methods, and the procedures were getting more and more mature. Su Ku could see clearly why she had done it step by step. She was born in an aristocratic family but did not cherish her possessions. She was a person who truly cared about the world. Su Ku felt that if such a person could not be called kind, who was qualified to be called kind? Jiang Pingji did not waver for long. She quickly regained her calm and indifferent expression. Open the warehouse, put in the grain, and build a porridge shed. Su-ku knew that his Lang Jun would do that. He had already prepared a plan. There was a batch of grain in the warehouse a while ago. If we build a porridge shed, it should last for half a month. Chapter 374. How much money is left in the warehouse? I don't know if the medicine shop is still there. Can I buy medicinal herbs? It would be better if I can hire a doctor. She could not save the people who died in the earthquake, but she would try her best to save the people who were still alive. If she had known that the earthquake would happen so suddenly, she would have looked for a doctor when she first came to Shangjing. In addition, allocate some money to hire the people who are still alive. Give them food or some wages. Ask them to help clean up the ruins and search for survivors under the ruins. Go and make a plan and calculate the cost. If it's not enough, Su-ku didn't need to calculate to know that the money in the warehouse was not enough. Therefore he told her the truth. Lang Jun, the money in the warehouse is not enough. Jiang Pengji pursed her lips and said, I will think of a way to get the money and food. You can do this first. Su-ku said, if we can persuade the families to open up their granaries, it might be effective. She sneered and asked bluntly, what do you think is the possibility? Countless people froze and starved to death during the snow disaster. How many families in Shangjing opened their granaries to get food? It was an earthquake now. Every family could not protect themselves. If they survived, they would leave the troublesome place immediately. Why would they stay? For the aristocratic families who boasted of their noble blood, ordinary people were like ants. Who would stay in a dangerous place like Shangjing for ants, let alone open the warehouse and give out money, food, and medicinal herbs? Su-ku remained silent in the face of her question. While they were talking, the sound of horses' hooves could be heard in the distance. Upon closer inspection, the person in the lead was the disheveled Huang Song. Behind him were a few soldiers in official uniforms. Brother Lu. Huang Song pulled the reins and stopped the horse in front of Jiang Pengji. Where is Brother Ju? He got off the horse. He could not help but secretly sigh in relief when he saw her pale face and messy hair. She was wearing a loose cloak. It seemed that she was not injured except that she was a little mentally weak. After listening to Jiang Pengji's words last night, Huang Song led his lackeys to patrol a few rounds. In the middle of the night, he even caught two hedonistic sons of aristocratic families fooling around on the streets. He was about to arrest them according to the rules of Shangjing when the earthquake occurred without warning. The first thing Huang Song did was to gather the troops to save the people. He, on the other hand, hastened his horse back to the mansion to take a look. His father had always slept late. When the earthquake happened, he was slightly injured, but his life was not in danger. He was lucky enough to escape. Huang Song ordered the surviving servants to save the people, search for money and food in the ruins, and place the old man in a relatively safe place. After making all the arrangements, he brought people to this area to search and rescue the officials and nobles who were trapped under the ruins. All of Shangjing had been reduced to ruins. 9 out of 10 rooms had collapsed. Along the way, Huang Song's heart sank. Who knew how many people would be left alive in Shangjing City after this disaster? Jiang Pengji glanced at Huang Song and the soldiers behind him. They all looked like they had just finished working at a construction site and were in a sorry state. Huijie is fine, but his arm is slightly injured. He's inside now. Although the inspector of Shangjing was a small official, similar to the head of the city management, there was one advantage. This position had people under him. That's good. Huang Song heaved a sigh of relief. He kindly advised Jiang Pengji, the situation is unstable now, and this is not a safe place. In order to prevent the rioters from robbing and killing people as well as robbing food and money, Brother Lu should make plans early. Jiang Pengji frowned after hearing that. She knew what the people would do when they were forced into a desperate situation, but there was a prerequisite. I heard that there are 100,000 Imperial Guards in Shangjing. If the Imperial Guards are mobilized, they can definitely pacify the people at once and save more people. Why would the people need to take risks out of desperation when the imperial court has opened the warehouse to release food? Her voice was laced with ice. Her sarcasm was obvious. Huang Song's expression became a little awkward when he was questioned. He said helplessly, "When the earthquake happened, the emperor's family was outside the city to avoid the summer. The imperial guards had to protect the emperor's family, so they couldn't leave easily." Hearing that, Jiang Pingji closed her eyes slightly. Su Ku, who was behind her, could hear the hidden meaning behind Huang Song's words. He almost could not help but step forward to question her. However, just as he took a step forward, Jiang Pingji raised her hand to stop him. The audience in the streaming room was still immersed in the devastation and discomfort of the ruins. When they heard Huang Song's words, they completely exploded. Lao Siji Lianmeng, what is this? There are 100,000 imperial guards. Can't they leave 10,000 to protect the emperor and the rest to save people? Dais Hajuan, Ba. Why do they need 10,000 to protect people? Who does the emperor of Dongqing think he is? Inyang Kuaixin, I've been following the live stream recently. According to the news, the imperial guards are the largest armed force in Shangjing. If they don't come out to save the people, are these beasts going to watch the lucky survivors die? Jiang Pingji glanced at the bullet screen from the corner of her eyes. She sneered in her heart. If the earthquake was smaller and occurred during the day, there would not be so many casualties. The emperor would probably be willing to mobilize the imperial guards to save people. Shangjing was now in ruins. How could it still be considered the capital? The cost of reconstruction was probably not something the current national treasury could bear. Under such circumstances, the emperor of Dongqing would naturally choose the method with the least loss. Zai Chili Diao. Hee, you have to know that in ancient times, the lives of the people were like grass. Life was indeed precious, but you had to be a high official or noble. Take Brother Huang Song for example. He brought people to save people, but they were all famous people in Shangjing. The speed of rescue in ancient times was so slow. At the same time, if ordinary people were saved, the officials and nobles might die. Put the two together. Who do you think will be saved first? Waha, I remember the Luchuan earthquake. I was in university in Luchuan at that time. The earthquake happened and the dormitory collapsed. I was rescued from the ruins by a soldier. Looking at this streaming room, I just want to know if I was an ordinary person, would I be able to live? Beef Soup Bujia Jiang. The person above, don't be funny. If that was the case, your corpse would have been cold long ago. You would probably have finished the reincarnation process. Balu Yang Shizhan fan. Let's not talk about it. It's full of negative energy. I want to smash my keyboard. I'm going to do something positive to calm myself down. I'm going to post on Baidu and see if I can attract some rich people to reward me in the streaming room. The audience in the streaming room chose to believe in Jiang Pingji with the prestige and credibility accumulated over the years of streaming. The rewards of various amounts continued. Huang Song seemed to have some sources of information. He had a good impression of Jiang Pingji, so he could not help but hint. Now that the emperor can't even take care of himself, Brother Lu, take the opportunity to leave quickly. From now on, you can fly freely in the sky and swim freely in the sea. If you're too late and the emperor remembers you and second Brother Feng, I'm afraid you won't be able to leave. After he finished speaking, he resumed his businesslike expression. Jiang Pingji sneered. I Lu Shi may not have other things, but I still have a backbone. If I abandon everything and escape now, what difference is there between me and a coward? You don't have to hide it from me, Bogeo. I'm not stupid. I know very well that the emperor saw that 9 out of 10 houses in Shangjing had collapsed. He was too lazy to spend a huge amount of money to rebuild the capital, so he wanted to leave with the nobles and the important ministers and move the capital directly, right? Who would spend a huge amount of manpower and material resources to rebuild Shangjing if they were going to move? If there was no intention to move the capital, even if the emperor was afraid of death, he would still send the imperial guards to save the people, even if it was just to save face. The dignified capital could not only have the emperor, but also the people. Now that the imperial guards were grasping tightly and refusing to rescue them, it meant that they were abandoning the people. Naturally, the intention to move the capital was obvious. You're tuning in to the Wang Lin's Journey YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.